My name is Marin, and I wake feeling like something dragged me up from the bottom of the ocean. My head throbs, my mouth tastes like ash, and the air around me smells of mold, wet earth, and burnt fat. The thatched roof above me leaks daylight in thin gray streaks. For a long second, I do not know where I am or whose body this is, only that the cold has gone all the way into the marrow and that someone is breathing too close. Then it settles on me at once. I am not Yang anymore, the office worker who died at his desk in another life. I am a thin teenager in a freezing mud hut, on the edge of a medieval surf village, with a neighbor boy named Hans watching me from across the dirt floor with both fear and hunger in his eyes. His parents are gone, my father is gone, and the memories slotted into this body tell me Hans treats my family like his only roof. I drag myself upright and check my own face in a dented water bowl. Messy brown hair, deep blue eyes, a wiry chest with the bare beginning of muscle from the hunting bow that hangs on the wall. My stomach growls so loud it embarrasses both of us. The whole pantry is 2 loaves of black bread, and even calling them bread is generous. They are bricks of sawdust and stone pebbles bound with whatever flour the miller did not skim, and I have to soak a piece in cold water just to chew it without losing teeth. It tastes like sand and old vinegar, but I get it down, then tear half of what remains and push it across to Hans, who takes it like I just handed him a chunk of gold. While he eats, I sit with my back against the wall and let the situation finish hitting me. Father is dead. Hans is my responsibility now. We have nothing, and winter is coming. And if I do not change something fast, we will both freeze in this hut before the first thaw. My eyes drift to the bow. Old plain mulberry wood, the string a little dry, the grip worn smooth by a stranger's palm I am supposed to remember as my father's. That bow is the only thing in this room with a future attached. I shove the rest of the bread under a cloth, pull the weapon down from the wall, and the moment my fingers close on the grip, a thin blue panel snaps open in the corner of my vision. It tells me the bow's draw weight, its effective range, the condition of the string. Data. Cold, clean, beautifully indifferent data, and it steadies me more than the bread did. Whatever this archery system is, it came with me from the other life, and it is going to be the difference between living and starving. I gather a handful of arrows, half sharpened wood and half iron tipped, and tell Hans we are going outside. The yard is a strip of dirty snow and a single dead tree about 10 meters off. I set my feet, draw, and the first shot embarrasses me even with the panel watching. My new body is weak and underfed, my arms shake at full draw, and the arrow plows into the dirt a full pace short of the trunk. Beautiful start, I think. The system flicks up a tidy correction tip, telling me exactly what my elbow and my fingers did wrong, and that is when I really understand what I am holding. Anyone else has to learn archery by losing fingertips for a year. I get a coach who never blinks. I adjust. I shoot again. This time the arrow bites the trunk and stays there. I shoot until my fingers go red and my shoulders shake, until the panel notes I have somewhere around 10 strong shots in me before the body taps out. Stamina is a wall, and I will be eating through it before anything else. I tell Hans we are going hunting. He flinches at the word goblin like the village priest just walked into the room, but I talk him down with the same logic I would have used on a nervous coworker. Goblins go after fat farms, not poor villages. An old ode would have warned the whole valley if any were skulking close. To give Hans something to hold, I press a small iron skinning knife into his hand. He clutches it like an heirloom. I check my own hunting knife through the system. The screen tells me the handle is half rotten and the blade could fly off in a real fight, so I wrap the half tight with leather cord and tell myself to make a better one later. Quiver over the shoulder, leather over the chest, bow in the offhand. I am not a starving orphan anymore. I am a hunter. Even if it is a hunter who has shot one tree. The black pine forest closes around us in a soft hush, and the damp air seems to file down my senses to something sharper than I had in either life. Hans stays half a step behind me, breathing too loud. The panel lights up almost at once on a glow near a rotten log, a tendril of purple plant the system labels as serpent's tongue grass. Rare magical herb. Strengthens the body, heals injuries. Worth a fortune. I crouch, brush the snow off the cluster, pluck 2 stalks, and force Hans to chew one with me. It tastes like burnt copper soaked in vinegar, but the heat that spreads from my stomach is real, and my constitution ticks up a permanent notch on the panel before I've even swallowed. Out here, magic is a side dish. We track a fat hare through the brush, and this time the assist is patient with me, accounting for wind, range, my own jittery breathing. I let the arrow go and the rabbit pins to the ground with a soft, almost surprised sound. Hans whoops so loud I have to shush him. First real trophy, and the pride that goes through me is honestly absurd, but I let myself feel it for one breath before moving on. We pick a careful handful of mushrooms the system confirms safe, and on the way out, I spot a pine trunk shredded by deep scratches, and pick up a heavy musky stink that the panel tags immediately as a 300-pound wild boar somewhere downwind. My current bow could not punch through that hide on a perfect day, so I turn us around and walk the long way home. The forest reminds you fast that greed is a way to die early. Back at the hut, I bar the door, get a real fire going, and skin the hare with the kind of fluid laziness my new skinning level apparently grants. The stew that comes off the fire, with mushrooms and the last of the salt, is the best meal either of us has eaten in months, and possibly the best either of us has eaten ever. I watch Hans wipe the bowl clean with his finger and tell him he is moving in permanently. I need a partner for what I have planned for the winter, and I would rather know my second pair of hands sleeps under my roof. Before sleep, I pull up the panel again, just to look. Archery and skinning have ticked up. The physical stats have crept off rock bottom. The herb effect is still humming quietly somewhere in my chest. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Inside, with my knife under my pillow and Hans curled up by the embers, I finally let myself feel like someone with a future. I wake to wet eyes from a dream that played the whole flat ordinary length of Yang's old life from start to back to the desk where I died. And waking up to this freezing mud hut is its own small grief. I let it be that for a moment, and then I let Yang go. I am Marin now. The Earth life was a long, quiet rehearsal. This is the run that counts. I take the rest of the Serpent's Tongue grass to Old Ode, the village chief. He is a retired adventurer with one good leg and the eyes of a man who has seen too much weather, and his face barely shifts when I open the cloth bundle on his table. He knows what those plants are worth instantly. In trade, he agrees to teach me real combat archery, not the rabbit shooting my father left me. While he sets aside the herbs, he talks the way a man who never gets to talk talks in a low, steady spill. The world is huge. Empires and kingdoms govern most of it. Power is divided into ranked levels. A village like ours is a fly speck on the Empire's map, and a fly speck is the only reason it has not been eaten. He offers me one of 3 special skills to anchor my training. I pick Precision Strike without needing to think, because the moment he describes it I can already see how it slots into my system's habit of painting weak points in red. He grunts approval and tells me that if I get strong enough to draw it, his old purplewood bow is mine. He runs me through drill after drill that morning in the frozen yard, scolding from a stool with his cane across his lap, and my form improves faster under him than it has any right to. The system absorbs every correction and stacks it on top of my own muscle memory, like layers of lacquer. Training is not food, though. I tell Ode about the giant wild boar I clocked the day before, and ask what he thinks about us going after it. He thinks about it long enough that I know he is not stopping me. I do not plan to fight a 300-pound ironhide head-on. I plan to use my brain, the way Yang's old life trained me to use it, and I plan to use Hans's shoulders and a shovel. We spend an exhausting full day digging a pit on the trail the boar uses, deep enough that a thing that big cannot lever itself out. The physical labor is brutal, and my constitution panel ticks up while I am still leaning on the spade. We cover the pit with thin branches, scatter leaves and crushed wild fruit across the top as bait, and back away leaving no human scent the wind will not erase. Then we wait. 4 days of practice, 4 days of patience, 4 days of me telling Hans no when his nerves spike and beg him to peek at the trap. Hunter's patience. You wait until the trap calls you, not the other way around. On the 5th morning, a roar rolls down the valley like a sermon, and we run. At the pit's edge, we find an enraged ironhide boar at the bottom of the hole, mountain of muscle and tusk, slamming its skull into the walls. The system overlays its weak points in red, and at the same time politely warns me that this thing is at the absolute ceiling of what I should be trying to kill. Hans wants to shoot. I stop him. It is almost dark. The beast still has strength enough to bleed us through the wall, and a night of cold and hunger and pure fury will drain it. We will be back in the morning with spears and iron arrows, and the hunt will end. Fog still clings to the village the next morning when Hans and I knock at Ode's door before sunrise. The old man is already up in his sheepskin coat, holding 2 long spears and a quiver of 20 iron-tipped arrows. He hands them over with the look of a man giving his grandsons keys to something they should not be allowed to drive. He tells me the spears are for protection, not for fighting bears, and that if I am not sure about that boar, I should turn around. He has guessed every step of our plan, but he also tells me young eagles learn to fly on their own. I promise him the best cut of meat for his drink tonight, and he chuckles and waves us off. The trap looks exactly the way I imagined. The black-maned ironhide lies half sunk in the mud at the bottom, breathing in deep, wet heaves, its bristles caked, its red eyes dulled by a night that drained it. I tell Hans to take one of the spears and prod it from the rim, not hard, just enough to make it lift its head and bare its tusks. He flattens out on his belly, jabs the boar's hind leg, and the beast roars and rears up exactly the way I want. Head up, eye exposed. I grip the purplewood bow Ode lent me for the morning. I cannot draw it to its full weight yet, but even at 3/4 my pull this bow throws an arrow at distances, an impact my mulberry would only dream about. I take one breath. The world hushes down to a tunnel. The system snaps Precision Strike active for the first time, and the boar's left eye blooms in my sight as wide and detailed as a moon. A faint crosshair settles over it. I let go. The bow makes a deep low sound like a struck drum, and the arrow vanishes into the eye socket without any of the cinematic drama the panel sometimes promises. The boar's huge body stiffens, then drops, and the muddy water at the bottom of the pit slaps up the walls. The system runs a clean line of text across my vision. Black-maned ironhide boar, level 4. Defeated. Perfect weak point strike. Damage overflow. Precision strike acquired and active at level 1. Archery proficiency now level 3. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Then the practical problem hits. We have a 400-pound beast at the bottom of a 3-meter pit, and 2 skinny boys above it. Hans suggests cutting it up and hauling the pieces. No, I tell him, because a complete pine-cured iron hide pelt is the kind of armor shop windfall I am not throwing away. Use your head. I pull 2 thick ropes out of my pack, jump into the muck despite the smell, lash the boar's legs into a clean cradle, climb back out and loop the free end of the rope over the sturdy branch of the nearest pine. Pulley. Lever. I rest one end on the trunk like a winch handle and tell Hans to pull on the count of 3. It takes us 20 grunting minutes, and a system note about a past strength check before the carcass finally tips up over the pit's lip and crashes to the ground. We collapse beside it, both wheezing, both grinning. Hans pets the bristled hide like it is a holy relic. I let him have one breath of awe and then we are up again, cutting saplings into a rough sled, lashing the boar across it, because the smell of fresh blood will be drawing wolves down the wind soon enough. Speed matters more than grace. We drag the sled into Chrome's village just as the sun gets high, and the entire place stops. Serfs in the fields drop their hoes. Women at the river forget their laundry. Whispers run faster than children. The black boar from the forest. The one even bears a void. Marin did this. After Jack died, look at the eye. 1 shot. That is a marksman. In a world that worships strength, the math is simple. The thing that kills a thing like this is automatically a different kind of person. And from this morning forward, no one is going to look at me or Hans and see 2 cold orphans anymore. I keep my face neutral and tow the sled into our yard. Grandpa Ode hobbles over before I can shut the gate. He looks at the boar, looks at the bloodied eye socket, looks at me, and is quiet long enough that the silence does its own work. Then he says, in the voice he uses when he is feeling something he will not name, that I have learned. I tell him it was luck. He says luck is a kind of skill too, and then he raises his voice for the villagers eavesdropping at the fence to hear. By the Empire's law, any beast taken outside the Lord's hunting grounds belongs to the hunter. This boar is Marin's trophy. The 2 or 3 pairs of greedy eyes I had clocked at the back of the crowd quietly find somewhere else to be. I shut the gate, and Hans and I get to work. I tell him to boil water, skinning, draining what is left of the blood, lifting the hide off in one continuous sheet. With level 2 skinning, my knife moves the way a good cook's knife moves, almost on its own. Half an hour later, the pelt lies on the floor, thick and tough and smelling of pine resin. 2 long curved tusks heavier than I expect. After the organs and bones come out, there is still close to 200 pounds of clean meat piled in cuts on every surface, and Hans is shaking like he might cry into it. He says we will not finish this meat by next year. No more black bread. But I am already past dinner. I tell him we eat well tonight, but the rest gets rubbed with ash and what little salt I have and smoked into preserved strips, because if we cannot finish it, we will lose it, and we still lack money, salt, and proper gear. The 2 tusks are knife length each. The hide could armor a small adventuring company. I tell him the plan. Tomorrow morning I am going to town, Whitestone Town, where there is an adventurers guild, where a hide and a pair of tusks are worth real silver, where I can finally see what these so-called professionals are actually like. Hans swallows hard and tells me he is coming too. He wants to see if the bread there is actually white. I tell him it is, soft, with milk and honey, and he goes back to stoking the fire with a kind of holy resolve. That night the hut smells of cooked meat for the first time in I do not know how long, and the smell is not just dinner, it is hope. I lie in the loft and watch a new skill tree unfold on the system panel and plan the next month while Hans dreams about white bread on the floor below. Dawn is so cold the air feels mixed with broken glass. Frost on the dead grass crunches under my boots, and my breath turns white the second it leaves my mouth. In the yard, a wooden handcart sits piled high with boar meat. Last night's drop in temperature has done my smoking work for me. The dark red cuts are cold and stiff, the blood inside frozen solid, and the cold is going to preserve them all the way to town. Hans ties down the last hindquarter with rope, and his face is flushed bright with excitement. The pelt is rolled up on top of the pile. The 2 tusks lie wrapped in burlap. Let us go to the village chief's, he says. We push the cart through the half-dark up the rise to Odie's stone house, and the old man is already at his door, dressed in faded linen hunting gear with a clean dagger at his hip and a travel pack on his back. He frowns at how thinly Hans and I are dressed and waves us in. The room smells of pine resin and old tobacco, and from a dusty oak chest under his bed he draws a folded shape of dark brown leather and hands it to me with both hands. Take it, he says. It is a half body of hardened leather armor, not new, not shiny, covered in the fine scratches and dark sweat lines of a life lived in it. The chest and shoulders are reinforced with cowhide plates. The rivets are dull but tight. The buckles are made of tough sinew. The whole thing breathes reliability the way a good knife does. He tells me he wore this when he was young, almost 30 years ago, and that he paid a dwarf craftsman 10 gold for it on the border of the Aquitaine kingdom. It has stopped a goblin's poisoned arrow and a ward's claws. Now his back is bent and he cannot wear it anymore, and if he leaves it in the chest, the moths will finish it. I open my mouth to refuse and he glares at me, and then he tells me to shut up and put it on. He still has not given me his bow, but the meaning lands clear. Whitestone Town is not the village, and on the road my life is the asset he is choosing to protect. I put the armor on. The system flicks an appraisal across it. Hardened leather armor of the seasoned ranger, old quality but fine, defense in the 8 to 12 range, durability worn but holding, lightweight enough that it barely affects agility, tough against blades, and one historical trait the panel labels veteran shelter, a faint passive that nudges the wearer's chance of dodging a surprise attack up slightly. Good stuff, I say, and I mean it. Ode snorts that I am done showing off and grabs his old patched travel bag. You are coming with us, I ask, and he shrugs and tells me that 2 boys carrying something that valuable would be stripped clean before they reach the gate. Besides, he wants the cheap ale at the Copper Jug Tavern in town, and his bones could use the walk. Hans, the cart, the cold, and the 3 of us. He limps, but he sets a pace that I have to work to keep, and his eyes never stop moving over the brush at the roadside. Whitestone Town is about 30 kilometers off, and the road is rough where the mud has frozen into ridges, so he uses the time to teach. He points at a birch where the bark has been stripped fresh and tells me a person did that with a knife, that the marks are fresh, that someone passed by within a half day and was not carrying much. Scout, maybe, or a thief. Out here, beasts are not the only thing to watch. People are worse. I make notes silently, and the scattered tracks to the side of the road start to organize themselves into clues I can read. By afternoon, we top the last hill, and the town spreads out below us on the plain, a gray-white, lazy giant of a settlement walled in pale quarried stone. 3 meters of wall covered in moss and vines, and Hans gawks like it is the gates of paradise. Ode smirks and tells him this is a small town, and that if he ever sees the capital, his jaw will fall to his ankles. The road thickens with traffic as we close. Shepherds with sheep, traveling merchants with packs, a couple of lean mercenaries on lean horses, and the air changes from cold pine to a complex mash of horse manure, cooking smoke, spices, and voices. Ode tells me that is the smell of prosperity. At the gate, 2 guards in half-plate take one look at the boar meat piled tall on our cart, and their eyes change. The bearded one prods the frozen pelt with the butt of his spear and asks where we got it. I open my mouth, and Ode steps in front of me, fishes a worn bronze badge from his pocket, waves it casually, and palms a few copper coins into the guard's hand. These are his juniors, he says. Lucky find. The guard recognizes the old badge of the Adventurers Guild, weighs the coins, and softens into a smile. He tells us we are welcome, but we must set our stall in the East Market District and not block traffic. We thank him and roll through. Inside the town, the noise hits like a wave. 2-story buildings of wood and stone line the streets, every sign painted with the trade beneath it. A wine glass for a tavern, a hammer for a smithy, a bun for a bakery, and the smell coming out of it makes Hans walk into a ditch. I am calmer on the outside, but the system is treating the whole street like a buffet, tagging the baker as a level 1 commoner, his white bread at 5 copper, the patrol guard at level 5 warrior. Ode pats my back and tells me to stop staring, that no one likes being measured. He points to a large building with a shield and crossed swords above the door at the end of the street. The Adventurers Guild, he says. Only they have the money to want to hide like this in tusks like those. And he glances at my chest armor. You should also see what a real professional looks like. The oak door of the guild is heavy enough that I have to lean my shoulder into it. Inside, heat and the smell of cheap beer, roasted meat, and old sweat hit me at once. The first floor is a wide tavern and quest hall, lit by a couple of whale oil chandeliers swinging on chains, full of drunks in worn leather bragging about goblin kills, hooded figures in corners cleaning blades, and mercenary teams arguing over loot at round tables. I step in and instinctively trigger universal appraisal across the room, and the result drops a stone into my chest. The big man at the counter with the giant sword resolves not as data but as a fog bank of gray mist, and the system mutters that the target is far above me, or has mental shielding and that pushing through could alert him. The woman in the long robe in the corner reads as the same gray fog, and the moment my gaze brushes her, she turns her head and shoots me a cold snake-like look that scrapes across the back of my mind like a pin. Cold sweat breaks across my back at once, and I drop my eyes. Lesson received. Level suppression is absolute. My golden finger is a clumsy peephole at best. When my gaze lands on the tavern waitresses, or the obvious rookies, the data comes back the way it should. Tavern waitress, level 1 civilian. Rookie warrior, level 2. Ode growls under his breath that some folks have bad tempers, and I should stay close. He leads us to the right side of the counter where a sign reads, Material Recycling, and at the desk behind it sits a thin, middle-aged man in a single-lens glass, who flips through a ledger without looking up. He greets Ode by name. Same as usual, Otter, he says, calling him by some old guild nickname I am not going to ask about. This time it is not me, Ode answers, and points back at me. I step up and lay the bundle on the counter, the 2 half-meter tusks, curved like blades, and the dark glossy pelt rolled out underneath. The room around us does not quiet exactly, but it does still. The appraiser pushes up his glass, stands, taps the tusks with his finger, runs his hand along the cut of the pelt where I peeled it from the fat. Black-maned ironhide, he murmurs, judging the wear on the tusks at 400 pounds at minimum. He looks at me, then at Ode, and seems to settle something for himself. He compliments the skinning, the intact tusk roots, the clean fat layer. He brings out a piece of sheepskin parchment and works through it with a stub of charcoal. 2 tusks make good dagger material, 16 silver. The hide will yield 2 sets of fine leather armor, 1 gold, 4 silver. The meat the guild kitchen will take, but not generously, 10 silver. Total, 2 gold, 10 silver. My heart kicks. A farmer in Chrome's village makes 1 gold a year if he is lucky. Then Ode pulls a small cloth pouch from his old hunting coat and tosses it on the counter. Add this in too. The pouch falls open on a single shriveled green ear. A goblin scout's left ear cut clean in 1 slash. I just about choke on the math. When did the old man find time to do that? The appraiser laughs and tells him he knew Odie would be up to something. A regular goblin ear runs 2 silver. Not much, every little bit. Final, 2 gold, 12 silver. Deal. I nod, and a heavy pouch slides across the counter, and the chime of the coins inside is the sweetest sound I have heard in either life. Outside, the air feels twice as clear, and Hans walks like the cobbles are clouds, asking should we buy a big sword? Should we buy out the bakery? I am older than my body in the head, and I keep some sense. I count out the 2 silver from Ode's ear and try to hand it back to him. He waves me off and tells me to keep it as a travel fee for his errands, and then he sweeps a hand across the shops lining the street and tells me that 2 silver in this money-hungry place barely buys a droplet of water. Towns are better than villages, but they still eat people alive. He squints at me. Are you enchanted by it? Want to stay and be a city person? I look at the well-dressed citizens, the goods in the windows, and I nod, then shake my head. I want to, but not now. Right now, I am a fat sheep holding a purse, and without strength, I cannot defend this money. I tell him I want a sword, a real one. A spear is too long, a bow is useless inside 3 steps, and I need a melee weapon I can rely on. I aim at the gleaming long swords in the nearest smithy, and Ode shakes his head and tells me not to walk into a place built to cheat newcomers. Those mass-produced iron swords snap on bone, and they cost. Save the money, he says, almost mysterious. Buy practical daily things. Salt, spices, sewing supplies. As for the weapon, he still has a curved sword from his own youth. Not magical, but better than any of those toys. He will hand it over when we get home. We spend the next hour shopping with the kind of restraint a kid in my body should not have. A big bag of fine salt, a roll of sturdy linen for Hans's clothes, needles and thread, a flint, a new iron pot, a bag of white bread and dried sausage. Finally, in a corner of the grocer, I find a crumpled universal language and literacy manual, and a few pieces of old sheepskin paper, and Ode looks at the books with the only soft expression I have ever seen on his face. Good, he says. An adventurer who cannot read is just cannon fodder. The sunset gilds the road home as the cart, which started this morning full of bloody meat, rolls back stacked with the marks of civilization. Hans gnaws white bread and hums something tuneless. My old leather armor catches the red light. Ode walks behind us with the faintest smile he probably does not know he is making. He tells me to swing by his house first to pick up the curved sword, and then to learn all those words. I stop and look back at Whitestone Town in the dusk, gray, white, and vast like a sleeping giant. I will be back, I promise myself, and we walk on. The next morning, my repaired thatch hut is full of the smells of a different life. Oak wood crackles in the hearth, the iron pot bubbles with smoked boar and pine cone mushrooms, and the first pinch of salt I ever sprinkled in a pot dissolves into the broth like white magic in front of Hans's eyes. He carefully tears a corner from a soft white loaf, dips it, takes a bite, and closes his eyes like he might cry. He asks if this is how city folks live, and tells me he has been living like a groundhog before this. I tear half my bread off and pass it across the fire. Eat more. You need the strength. I sharpen father's old hunting knife with the new whetstone while he wolfs the bread. The old leather armor sits beside me on the floor with a fresh quiver of iron-headed arrows. 2 gold 55 silver is enough money to carry us comfortably through this winter and the next, but I caught the jealous looks in the shadows last night when we rolled in with the cart, and the village chief's blessing only holds the wolves off for so long. A pile of meat in front of a starving pack is still a pile of meat. I tell Hans to finish up, hang the meat high on the beams, and meet me at the chief's house. He brightens and asks if we are going to town again, and I shake my head. We are going to learn skills, because eating white bread will not keep these supplies. In Ode's yard, the old man lounges on a wooden stool in the thin sun, watching us walk in fully armed. He raises one lazy eyelid and says we look well fed, that he smells the meat and flour from the gate. I bow. Village chief, we are here for the appointment you set. You said you would teach me how to use a curved sword and help us start learning to read. He grunts that my memory is good, stands, dusts off his pants. Today he does not use his cane, and the limp does not affect his stance. He walks under the eaves and pulls a long-sheathed sword off a covered rack and tosses it to me. It is heavier than I expect. Hardwood scabbard banded in iron, dark with use. The grip is wrapped in a coarse, non-slip leather. I draw it and it sings a slightly rough metallic note. An Aquitaine cavalry curved sword, blade about 80 centimeters. An elegant, deadly curve, the steel dull gray-white with fine wear marks across the polish. Not razor pretty. Hungry. The system overlays the appraisal. Old cavalry curved sword of Ode. Fine quality green tempered steel and hardwood grip. Attack around 10 to 15 with a swing bonus. Leverage cut trait that boosts swing speed by a noticeable margin. Blocking tool trait that allows the thick spine and guard to deflect light weapons. Evaluation: a retired soldier's trusty companion, much deadlier in trained hands than any decorative blade. Nice sword, I tell him sincerely. He snorts. That is the one that rolled with him through corpse piles, he says, and draws his close-fit dagger reverse grip, and his entire body language changes. The lazy old man drops away and a wolf walks out into his place. He tells me I have a talent for archery and I am quick on precision strike, but that on a real battlefield, especially against goblins and kobolds who swarm, an archer who lets enemies close is a dead archer. A curved blade is not a sword. It does not need fancy thrusts. It cuts and sweeps. Use your strongest force, he says, and cut him. I hesitate, afraid to actually hit him, and he sneers and tells me my moves are so weak I could not graze his clothes. The youth in this body wakes up at the insult. I grab the grip in both hands, raise high, and slash diagonally at his shoulder with everything in my new shoulders. The blade howls. Just before it lands, he shifts. A small step to the side and forward, almost like a slip. My target vanishes and a sharp pain explodes in my right wrist where his dagger hilt cracks the joint. The sword clatters out of my hand, and I clutch my wrist, swearing. Too slow, too stiff, he booms. Who told you to plant your feet and chop like a woodcutter? I am sweating from a single swing, but I do not cry out. I pick up the sword and back off, and we go again. This time I do not commit the full swing. I leave a margin to recover, test a sweep instead of a chop. Ode leans back to dodge, and his dagger taps the side of my blade like a snake's tongue. Some clever wrist turn flicks my sword outward. My whole guard opens, and the cold edge of his blade kisses my throat. You have died twice, he says, dry as paper, and steps back. For the next hour, I die over and over. He breaks my attacks, disarms me, taps my vitals from impossible angles, leaves dull bruises up and down my arms and thighs with the flat of his knife and the toe of his boot. I learn through getting hit. I watch him pivot on his bad leg, watch him use a short weapon to nullify a longer one's reach, watch him hold the rhythm of a fight just slightly off from mine, so my swings always land on air. By the end, I am barely standing. The system pings cheerfully in my head. After intense combat practice, you have understood the basics of swordsmanship. New skill acquired. Curved sword mastery at level 1. Feature unlocked. Basic block, you can defend more effectively with your weapon. I lean on my sword, sweating through the armor, exhausted. But the satisfaction of the unlock is its own kind of warmth. Ode watches me with the faintest hint of approval. That is enough for the morning, he says. You are smarter than I expected. You at least know to stay standing when you get hit. Take a break. Wash your face. After lunch, we move to thinking. After lunch, we move to the oak table inside his house. The literacy manual I bought in Whitestone sits open beside several yellow sheets of sheepskin parchment covered with his handwritten notes and small maps. The room is dim, and he lights an oil lamp. For a professional, muscle matters, he says, tapping the book with the same whip he uses to discipline me. But if you are illiterate, you are just high-level cannon fodder. If you cannot read the quest scroll, the map, the forbidden runes on a magic page, you will die without knowing why. Hans squints at the first squiggle on the parchment, says it looks like a tangled mess of God knows what, and asks if old Ode can really read this stuff. I adapt fast. The writing system here braids phonetic and ideographic forms in a way nothing in Yang's life prepared me for, but my spirit score from the fusion of two souls is genuinely above normal, and I soak the rules up like a sponge. While he teaches, he leaks world building into me the way a teacher does when he likes the student. He writes Imperium across the parchment in big letters. Our land belongs to the greatest empire, he says. Sunset Sea in the west, misty mountains in the east. We are a fly speck in a remote corner of the southeast. He writes the word tax. Some ask why no one has collected taxes from our village in years. Simple, he sneers. It is not worth it. The road costs more than they would skim. Sometimes lords forget about a place on purpose. Good news for us. It means no oversight. Bad news, it means we are on our own when the wolves come. I copy the words awkwardly with a feather pen. By dusk, I have over 20 words and the basic spelling rules locked down. Hans is drooling on his parchment until Ode whips him awake, and the old man finally puts out the lamp and tells us to take the curved sword home and read tonight. The cold night wind blows the weariness out of me on the walk back. Hans complains that he is better at digging holes than reading. I ruffle his hair and tell him to take his time, that learning his own name and the guild bounty notices is enough, and that I will handle the rest. After dinner, he sleeps on the warm hay almost the instant his head goes down. I sit by the fire alone and pull up the panel. Marin, human, border resident of the Est Empire, free citizen of Chrome's village, tentative. Level 2, strength 1.2, slightly above an average grown man able to wield a hunting bow and steady a curved sword. Agility 1.3, reactions much sharper from training. Constitution 1.1, sub-health healed by meat and herbs. Spirit 2.1, soul fusion and study boosting perception. Combat skills, archery level 3, with the precision strike trait. Curved sword mastery level 1 with basic block. Life skills, skinning level 2, common language literacy level 0. Item appraisal unique, future sight unique, on cooldown. Better than when I crossed over, but in front of Ode's drawn dagger I am still nothing, and in the guild I could not even appraise the strong ones. Still not enough. I clench my fist and feel the new blisters from the curved sword open and close. Outside the wind picks up and somewhere in the distance a beast howls, not so far from the village. Winter is here. It is going to be a turbulent one. On the third morning of Frost Moon, I open the door and step on a layer of white frost crisp as glass. My breath whitens once and is torn away by the wind. Hans is already in the yard wiping frost off the limbs of his bow with a rag, his red cold-burned face flashing me a grin and telling me the water jar did not freeze. The fire is lit. I nod, dip cold water from the corner barrel, splash it on my face, fully awake. I look at the old curved knife on the wall. The sheath is hardwood ribbed in iron and worn down to grain in places. The non-slip leather on the handle is still firm. Ode gave it to me back yesterday, telling me that a knife needs to listen to the owner's sweat. The stew burbles in the pot. I slice 2 pieces of rye. The smell of fat in a cold room is its own kind of treasure. Hans leans over the pot like it might float away. I tell him to finish up, that we are going to the chief's for moving target practice and another round of language. Ode's yard is at the west edge of the village, hard against the trees. When we get there, he is not on his stool but standing in the middle of the yard, sharpened wooden stakes piled at his feet, driving them one at a time into the frozen ground. They range from 10 to 30 steps off, heights uneven, deliberately irregular. Just in time, he says without looking up. Imagine these are goblins. Short, quick, sneaky. He points Hans to a corner tree and tells him today he is not shooting arrows, he is throwing. He tosses Hans a grass rope net heavy with pine cones. Hans blinks at the net, confused. Marin, you come in from the other side. Pass through the stakes and cut each charcoal mark I drew. Not graze. Hit. Hans, when he passes, throw pine cones. Hard. At the body, not the air. I look at the stakes. Some marks are at chest height, some knee, one above shoulder for an enemy on horseback. The gaps between the stakes are narrow enough I have to turn sideways to squeeze through. Begin, Ode says, retreating under the eaves with his arms folded. I draw the curved sword. The blade has a dull gray-white shimmer in the morning light. Its elegant curve no longer a decoration to me but a real heavy weight in my hand. I step into the maze. First stake on my front right, mark at waist height. I twist sideways, swing in a quick arc, snap. A fresh cut on the stake, half a hand off the mark. Too deliberate, Ode calls. A curved sword is not an axe. It flows like water around stones. I press on. Second stake, front left, shoulder height. Instead of chopping, I flick upward in a rising sweep. The blade nicks the mark dead on. Wood chips fly, and almost at the same instant a pine cone flies in from the side and bonks my back. It does not hurt. It does break my focus for one breath. Stay on the field, Ode shouts. Hans, faster. Are you hungry? Hans grits his teeth and chucks another. This one whistles past my ear. I force myself to ignore the projectiles and focus on the next stake, low at knee height. I have to squat, chop down. Another pine cone clips my sword wrist and the blade tilts and lands below the mark. Keep your wrist steady, Ode barks. A mosquito bite cannot move your sword. A goblin spear will. Sweat beads on my forehead in the freezing air. I keep moving. The stakes crowd closer, the marks get trickier. Hans's pine cones get more accurate. The boy has figured out a trick. He throws right as I commit to a swing. Twice they almost catch my face and I dodge with a turn of the head. My right arm starts to ache, but my movements smooth out. I stop trying to spot each mark with my eyes. I let the body feel the position of the stakes through the air and the curve of the blade find the marks on its own. I block flying cones with the spine of the sword, sidestep, spin, swing. When I finally cut the last shoulder-high stake, the cut is wedged deep and dead on the mark. I sheath the sword and breathe out a long white plume. Ode walks over from the eaves, scans the cuts on each stake, the crookedness at the start and the cleanness by the end. 34 stakes, 28 marks hit, 11 cones to your body, he says. Okay. From Ode, okay is a compliment, and I take it. He gives me a quarter-hour break, then says we move to the bow. Hans is told to go pick up cones and count how many actually landed. Hans grumbles his way over to the pile. The archery drill moves to the edge of the woods. Ode hangs several woven grass rings from a horizontal branch of an old oak, ropes their lower edges back to his hand. Moving target, he says, and tugs. The rings start swaying, some side to side, some up and down, some spinning. 50 steps. Shoot through the ring without touching the edge. I knock and draw. Aim at a swinging one. The arrow grazes the edge and sticks in the trunk behind. Too slow, Ode says. When the ring swings left, aim at its right. The arrow takes time to arrive. Watch. He takes my bow, draws halfway without even looking. The rings are swinging. He raises his hand and looses on an exhale, and the arrow passes through the center of a ring with momentum to spare and sticks into the brush beyond. Hans's mouth falls open. Practice makes perfect, Ode says, tossing the bow back to me. 100 arrows, 70 hits is passing. The first 10 of mine hit 3. I stop, close my eyes, replay Ode's motion in my head. Not aim, feel. Predict the ring's path, compute the arrow's flight, breathe with the hand. Second 10, 5 hit. Third, 7. Sweat drips off my chin and dots the frozen ground. My right arm spreads pain from shoulder to fingertips. Every draw feels like tearing muscle. I grit my teeth and shoot anyway. Ode varies the rhythm by jerking the rope. Fast, then slow, then stop, then fast again. I push my hunter's instinct to its edge, my body sensing more than my eyes can keep up with. The system pings, dynamic shooting training improving focus and spatial awareness. Archery experience climbing. Precision strike trait enhanced, accuracy on moving targets at medium range up by a meaningful margin. By the 50th arrow, my right palm is raw, blood mixing into the bowstring, but I have put 35 through the rings. Ode calls a halt. Hand, he says. I hold it out. The skin has torn open, blood and sweat mixing into the lines of the palm. He fishes a small clay jar from his pocket, scoops out a dark green ointment, and smears it on the wound. It is cold and sharp and smells of strong herbs, and the pain fades almost immediately. A ranger's hand cannot be wasted, he says, wrapping the palm with a dirty cloth. Tomorrow you keep going. Hans, your turn. Fixed target, 20 steps, 50 arrows, 30 hits. Miss and no meat tonight. Lunch is in his house. Meat stew, black bread, a jar of pickles. He pulls out a small wine flask, takes a sip, hands it to me to boost my blood flow. The strong liquor burns down my throat and warms my gut. I hand it to Hans, who tries one careful drop and immediately sticks his tongue out at the burn. After we eat, Oda does not jump into the next drill. He sits on his stool by the fire and starts whittling a stick with his small knife. Curls of shavings drift into the flames. Marin, he says after a while, voice low under the crackle of the wood. Do you know why I picked you? I set down my bowl. Because I am good at archery. Many people are good at archery, he says without looking up. When I was young in the guild, I saw elves who could shoot through a coin at 200 steps, and half-elves who could loose a volley from a short bow and hit 10 birds in the air. You are still far from that. He pauses, knife carving a deep groove into the stick. I picked you, he says, because of something I see in your eyes. He looks up. His yellow eyes pick up the firelight like amber stones. Not acceptance, not greed, refusal to quit. You want to survive to live well, and so you grind your teeth and bleed, and pull the broken bow in freezing weather over and over. I am quiet. The fire lights my young face and the fine wind and frost lines across it. Chrome's village is too small, he goes on. So small it is not on the Empire's map. So small the tax collector has not come for a decade. But it is still here. Why? Because some people are rooted here like grass and stone. He turns his eyes back to me. I am old. This leg, he pats his right thigh. It keeps me up on rainy nights. I can only teach so much and protect so much. But the village still needs guarding. In winter, the wolves. In spring, the goblins. In summer, bandits. In autumn, whatever else. Your father, old Jack, was a good hunter, but he only guarded his own home. You are different. Voice soft and heavy as a hammer to the chest. You see a bigger place. That is why I teach you. Give you the knife, the bow, the form. Not as a gift to thank me, so that someday, when you can put an arrow through a leaf at 150 steps, when you can walk out of an ambush of 20 goblins unscratched, you will go somewhere for me. I sit up straight. He keeps carving. The stick is now a straight, smooth shaft. My 4 brothers and I took a job to clear a goblin den, he says, a long time ago. That is where it was. He puts the knife down for a moment and turns the shaft to the firelight before going back to carving. We made a mistake. We were too confident, too eager. We went in at night to catch them sleeping. All at once there was more in the cave than goblins. He keeps his voice flat. There was something else. A dark thing that moved like a shadow, with claws that opened armor. We were ambushed. The bows did not work in the dark. We stood back to back all night. When the arrows ran out, we used the curved knives. John, the shield bearer, went first, dragged into the dark with only a warning shout. Lena, the healer, tried her holy symbol against the dark and was bitten at the neck from behind. The last 3 of us ran for the entrance. Roy the thief led. The ground broke under him and he fell into a pit of stakes. I turned back to help him and was bitten on the leg. He pats the thigh again. Bones broken, could not stand. Caden the dwarf warrior carried me out at a sprint. He pauses. I lay outside the cave all night, listening to the sounds inside fade. By dawn, I crawled away with my life. Later, the guild went looking. Only Roy's dagger was found near the trap. The rest was gone. He looks straight at me, and the dull yellow eyes are burning with something cold and hot at the same time. 10 years. Every winter when this leg aches, I remember them. I remember John bragging about his family shield. I remember Lena whispering a prayer before healing. I remember Roy stealing my wine and me smacking him. He blows softly on the arrow shaft, and the curls of wood drift off. I taught you this so that one day you can walk into that cave, clear out whatever is still inside, and bring me something of theirs. A bone, a torn cloth, a button. Bury it where you can see the sunrise. His voice is soft, but it might as well be carved into stone. That is the reward I want. Not money, not gratitude. A clean accounting to my brothers. I look at the old man. Firelight in the deep cuts of his face. The man who scolds and limps and whips us with a cane has been carrying this weight for 10 years and never let it show. I understand, I say. Clear the nest. Bring them home. No vows. No theatrical promises. Just a weight set down between us. Ode looks at me for a long moment and slowly nods. He tosses me the sharpened shaft. Your arrows are too rough. Use this. Tomorrow I will teach you how to wrap the feathers. Hans stands near me, eyes red, whispers village chief. I want to go too. I will help my older brother carry things. Ode only glances at him, rarely scolding. First be able to draw a 30-pound bow. Outside, wind howls and pushes snowflakes against the window. Inside, the fire warms us briefly. I close my hand on the smooth shaft, feel the faint warmth in the wood. Far off, old Black Mountain hides behind winter fog like a sleeping giant, and a place called Howling Cave waits in the dark for me. It is still too early, but one day I will go. Before then, I have to be strong enough to draw a heavier bow, swing a faster knife, see in the dark, survive desperate conditions. The night is long. The training has only begun. By the 15th of Frost Moon, the training enters a new stage. The yard stakes and grass rings are no longer enough. Early morning Ode drops 2 bundles of arrows wrapped in oilcloth at my feet. Real fletched arrows, neat gray goose feathers, straight shafts, iron heads that catch the cold light coldly. 20 arrows, he says. Miss one. 50 extra pull-ups. Today we do not go deep. We stay at the edge of the misty forest. Hans follows. Quiver. Watch your step. Look up too. I untie the oilcloth. The weight of the new arrows in my hand sits heavier than the wooden ones I made myself. The head is a 3-sided pyramid with a tiny blood groove. This is a killing arrow, not a rabbit arrow. Hans hauls a quiver almost as tall as he is, his face a little pale and his eyes bright. He thumps his chest and says, "Village chief, I promise to watch my big brother's back." Ode says nothing. He just looks at me, then waves us out. The forest of mist earns its name. Even on the clearest day, a thin gray veil drifts among the trees. Cold autumn meeting underground swamp damp for generations makes it hard to see 50 steps. Trunks wear thick moss and lichen, the ground layered in decayed leaves soft and quiet underfoot, hiding holes and tangled roots. I take point with the curved knife already drawn and held loose at my side. The faint sound of leather rubbing on leather is loud in the wood's silence. Hans falls 3 steps back with the quiver, eyes scanning bushes and overhanging branches. Ode taught us that in places like this, danger can come from any direction. We follow a barely visible hunter's trail. This was one of Father's routes, avoiding the worst of the swamp, with a few fixed trap points along the way. My goal is to check the traps and see if anything is triggered. We are running low on meat. The first trap, near a fallen giant cedar. I wave hands still and crouch. The rope mechanism is intact, but the bait, a piece of blackened cured meat, is gone. Tiny claw marks in the damp soil nearby, like a small animal. "Fox," Hans whispers, moving closer. I shake my head and lift the leaves aside with the knife tip. In the soil, a clear print. 3 thin toes with sharp claws at the front. A narrow paw the size of a child's palm. The edges of the print have not dried. My expression goes still. Not a fox. Not a badger. Nothing my father ever taught me. But Ode mentioned something casually a few days ago. Goblins. I whisper. Hans inhales and clamps his hand on the strap of his quiver. Goblins. Small green-skinned pointed ears, the kind of monsters border villages tell stories about. They move in groups, attack lone travelers, steal livestock, raid weak villages. The kind I have killed before. Only one, Hans whispers, voice shaking a little. I do not answer. I stand and scan the area. The fog drifts slow through the trees. I crouch like Ode taught me and press my ear to the ground. Silence. Only the wind in the treetops and the faint hush of a distant stream. But something is wrong. It is too quiet. No bird calls. There should be sparrows or crows. I rise and signal Hans to follow me. Quiet. And we leave the path southeast toward a small rise of higher ground. Ode said goblins like high ground for temporary camps and lookouts. The leaves under our feet grow thicker, the smell of decay mingling with moss and earth. I step lightly, planting toes first, then shifting weight. Hans tries to mirror me and crunches a twig once and pales every time. After 15 minutes, a jumble of rocks looms through the fog ahead, the leftover of an old landslide. I wave hands down behind a large stone and climb silently up the cold rock face like a gecko, looking out through the gaps. Below is a small flat clearing. In the middle, a pile of ashes still leaking thin blue smoke. Around it, gnawed clean little bones from birds or mice, and a few shiny scraps that might be broken glass or stolen buttons. My chest tightens at the 2 small figures in the clearing. They stand only as tall as Hans's chest, skin a dull greenish gray, covered in warts and bumps, pointed ears poking from messy tangled hair, tatters of stolen cloth and leather barely covering them. One sits hunched, scratching at a piece of wood with a sharp flint. The other holds a thick stick with a stone tied to the top, eyes flicking around. Goblins. 2 of them. Either a pair alone or guards. My head goes through it quickly. 2 enemies I can handle. Simple weapons, neither elite. 40 steps, bushes and rocks between us. Line of sight clean enough for the bow. Hans is below, do not let him join the close fight. I slide back into the rocks, drop down, and make a few hand signals to Hans. 2 enemies. Knock an arrow. Listen for my signal. He nods hard, hands trembling, but sets the quiver down steadily, draws my hunting bow, and knocks. I check the dagger at my hip and climb back up to better cover. Knock. Draw. The strings sighs faintly tight in the silence. I aim at the goblin carving the one most distracted. Take this one first, then drop the second one distracted by Hans with the dagger up close. Breath slow, heartbeat steady. 40 steps, faint breeze, target almost still. Archery at level 4 gives me the fine control through my arm and fingertips. I release. The arrow cuts through the mist and slams into the side of the carver's neck. It lets out a sharp, short scream, the flint in the wood spilling from its hands, both palms clawing uselessly at its throat. Dark green blood pours through its fingers and it topples back. The other one jerks, grabs its stick, small red eyes wide, locks onto my rock. "Hans!" I shout. Hans, already prepared, peeks out and yanks his small bow back and looses a wild shot at the standing goblin. The arrow flies wide over its head into a tree behind, but it pulls the goblin's attention and the creature roars and waves its stick at him. Now. I leap down from the rocks, roll on landing to absorb the drop, dagger out and sprint. The goblin hears me behind, whips around, swings the rough stick toward me with a hum of wind. It is surprisingly fast. I do not dodge or block. I commit forward and at the last instant drop into a crouch, slide under the stick, and as my body passes I sweep the curved dagger upward in a cold arc. The blade cuts through the torn leather and the tough green skin under it, deep into chest and gut. Foul blood and warm guts splatter across my arm. The goblin gives a dying hiss like a punctured wineskin, drops the stick, staggers back 2 steps, falls, twitches once. The whole fight took 10 seconds. The forest goes back to silence except for the slow drip of blood. The smell of it fills the damp air. Hans runs out from behind his rock, face the color of paper, throat working as he tries not to throw up. I breathe deep to settle, scan the clearing twice for movement, then go to the first body. I pull the feathered arrow out and wipe the blood on its rags. The iron head is bent slightly but usable. I kneel, fighting the nausea myself now, and slice off the goblin's long pointed ears. The green blood is thick and stinks. I wrap the ears in a cloth and slip them into a hidden pocket inside the leather armor. Ode told me the Whitestone Guild buys these. A complete pair of adult goblin ears runs 2 silver. Important trophy. Proof we faced a monster and came back. Big brother, Hans whispers, voice still trembling. Are they dead? They are, I say, standing. I go to the stream to wash the dagger in my hands. Cold water on tingling skin, clears my head. Check for more tracks. He gathers his courage and searches the clearing. Soon he calls me quietly. Big brother, there's a path. Lots of small prints going that way. He points into the denser fog beyond the rocks. Sure enough, a series of dense small footprints leading deeper. At least a dozen overlapping sets. Frequent use. The path to the nest. I do not follow. Ode's warning runs in my head. Never go alone into an unknown monster's lair, not without preparation. 2 silver is tempting. Life is just the one. Remember this spot, I say. Let us head back. We kick the goblins' simple weapons and their little pile of trinkets into the ashes to bury them and leave. We move more cautiously on the way back, glancing behind us every few steps until we reach the edge of the misty forest. The low outline of Chrome's village in the distance loosens our shoulders a little. Goblins, Ode growls when we tell him in his house. Near the edge of the misty forest, he drops the dagger he was cleaning, walks over to the rough hand-drawn map on his wall, focuses on the misty forest section. 2 of them, acting as sentinels, tracks deeper in, probably a nest of more than 20, I add, and put the bloodied cloth bundle on his table. He opens it, looks at the pair of ears, nods. Adult goblins. He goes back to the table and taps the wood. 20. Not large, not small. They do not usually come this close to humans unless something disturbed the main nest, or they are setting up a forward base. Or what? Hans presses. Maybe stronger monsters drove them out, or they are planning something. Deeper into the misty forest, near Blackwater Marsh, there has been on and off conflict between kobold tribes and goblin clans for years. Maybe those little green pests got pulled in. He looks at me. Keep the ears safe. Next time you go to town, trade them. Remember where the nest is. Southeast of the rocks, footprints leading toward Blackwater Marsh. Do not act rashly, he says, his voice serious now. 20 goblins rushing you at once would tear you to bones, no matter how good you have gotten. Goblin dens have traps. Simple, but mean. I understand, I nod. He thinks for a beat, then tells me the next phase. Keep practicing archery. Moving targets. Quick draw. 3 arrows and 3 breaths. 3 different targets. For the curved sword, starting tomorrow. Footwork. Forest fighting. How to use trees and rocks. Hans, your archery still needs work, but your eyes are good. Your timing today on the interference was correct. From now on, hide in reconnaissance. Learn how to walk silently in the woods. Read tracks. Learn the activity patterns of goblins. He pauses. Tomorrow you also train with a real short knife. Stab and slash. The goal is simple. When an enemy gets close, you put it in their belly or eye. The next several days roll into a heavier rhythm. Every morning before dawn, we run laps around the village under Ode's watch. Footwork drills in the yard, advanced retreat sidestep quick turns weaving between mock trees, blocks and slashes against thrown cloth-wrapped sticks, coming at me from any angle. All of it under Ode's quick aim at joints and vitals despite his bad leg. My body gets covered in fresh purple and blue stripes that never quite have time to fade. Archery training moves into the woods. Ode hangs old leather armor and shields from branches, and makes me shoot at the swaying targets while I run and weave through the trees. Distances range from 30 to 60 steps. Light conditions varied. Quick draw, instant aim, decisive release while moving. Arrows go fast, but my accuracy climbs every day. Hans sticks close to Ode, learning footprints, droppings, broken branches, gnawed plants. Ode teaches him terrain and foliage hides, how to control breath and heartbeat, how to stay perfectly still in a lie-up. The boy studies seriously, and the once innocent eyes of a child quietly take on a hunter's alertness. Every 2 or 3 days I go alone, sometimes bringing Hans on a practical run to the edge of the misty forest near the rocks. I never get close. I use Ode's worn but functional brass spyglass to observe from distance and note that the goblin sentinels change about every 4 hours. I see small groups of 3 to 5 leaving the nest area to forage. I map approach routes and retreat routes. The location of the nest sharpens in my notes. About a mile southeast of the rocks, a hidden underground entrance covered with vines and stones, possibly an old animal den expanded by clawwork. Crude wooden barriers and a fence decorated with bones and torn cloth as warnings. Quiet by day. At night, faint sharp noises and shadows of campfires flickering on the cave walls. Over 20 greens living within half a day's walk of our village. A thorn in the throat. I lay all of this out for Ode on a piece of grass paper, the rough sketches and the markings. He looks long, then nods. Almost there. The inside is unclear, but the entrance should be the only one. Less active by day, more alert at night, and also more chaotic. He taps the sketch with a charcoal pen. You want to attack? Yes, I answer. They are too close to the village. I need real combat. Risky real combat. And I need the money. Bounty hunting is one reason. The nest could also have supplies. Copper coins at least. Salvage maybe. Ode weighs me for a long moment. 5 more days, he says. In 5 days, your moving target at 60 steps must hit 70%, and your woodland footwork must survive 20 attacks without falling. Hans must be able to stab a moving rabbit-sized target within 30 steps with a short dagger. Meet the marks and I help you plan. Miss them and you keep practicing until they come to you or grow large enough to drag everyone else's trouble in. Yes, I say. No hesitation. 5 days. I look out the window. The misty forest in the evening looks like a crouched beast. The cave inside it a rotting sore under the skin. 5 days. I have to lance it. Late that night, I sit under the oil lamp with a piece of charcoal, sketching attack plans on the back of rough paper. Hans is already asleep, breathing soft. Outside, wind moves through dry branches with a thin whine. The sword needs sharpening, the bow needs more pull. The next days fill with sweat and heavy breathing. Ode no longer separates bow drill and sword drill. He fuses them into something he calls the hunter's rhythm. Rangers are not just archers or swordsmen, he tells us in the morning fog, standing in front of a line of dew-glazed stakes. They are people who can shoot an eye at 50 steps and cut a throat inside 3. Distance is your armor and your prison. Knowing when to draw the bow and when to draw the sword is what makes you a real ranger. The training gets meaner. He hangs old armor stained suspicious dark brown on the stakes and makes me run, stop, roll, ricochet off trees while shooting at small charcoal marks on the armor. Miss and I do 30 pull-ups in the cold. As I work, he limps in fast with a cloth-wrapped stick like a snake, jabbing at my sore drawing arm and sluggish running legs. Create distance, he barks. Are your legs decoration? I jump back, trying to knock again. He shadows me, points, pokes, sweeps, blocking every chance I have to draw. Draw the sword, are you waiting to die? I sling the bow and draw the curved blade backhand. Our weapons crash with a dull sound. I spin, aim at his wrist, a result of weeks of footwork and flowing cuts. He flicks his wrist, taps my blade to guide it, and suddenly my middle is open. The cold tip of the stick taps my Adam's apple. Dead again, he says flat, lowering the stick. Your rhythm is off. When archers get rushed, the first choice is always to create space. If you cannot pull back, draw decisively. But the sword is to buy room to draw, not to fight to the death. Only living rangers are valuable. Dead ones are corpses. Day after day, the bruises stack. My motions become more precise even through pain, my eyes colder and more focused under his repeated kill-me threats. Switching between bow and sword no longer hangs awkwardly. My steps between trees and posts leave faint afterimages. I can feel my muscles tightening under pressure, my breath longer and steadier under hard work. My sense of distance, timing, and my own limits becomes clearer, like a thin sheet of ice forming over my awareness. No sudden surges, only steady cuts and pain and repetition. Hans transforms too. Ode gives him a real short knife, only as long as his forearm, but sharp. He drills it at close range, stabbing imagined bellies, ribs, chins from below with minimal motion. Dull, dangerous work. He nearly cuts himself twice. He learns seriously, and the boy's eyes, always with that hint of fear, start to set into a focused predator stare. Ode also teaches him more complex traps and tracks. He picks them up fast. Every few days we head to the misty forest. Not for recon, for hunting. Targets are lone goblins or pairs and trios. We move through the woods like ghosts. My hunter's instinct grows stronger on targeted hunts, the awareness of malice and gaze sharpening. Hans uses Ode's lessons to find the gaps in standard goblin patrol routes. The first real hunt, the target is 2 goblins drinking by a creek. I crouch behind bushes 30 steps off and aim steady at the back of one goblin's head. Hans is closer, hidden behind a tree trunk, short knife half drawn, holding his breath. The string twangs and the arrow takes the green head. The other goblin turns, startled, grabbing a stone axe. I drop the bow and rush, steps fast on wet creek stones, body low, the cold glint of the curved knife flashing off the water. The goblin shouts and swings the axe wildly. I do not block. I shift just before the swing and slide past the blade, and using the momentum I drive the curved knife up under the ribs to the hilt. Foul green blood splashes. The whole fight less than 5 breaths. Hans does not even have time to fully come out of cover. We cut the ears, clean the scene, and vanish into the woods. No cheers. Quick breath, fast heart. Fast retreat. When we are safe again, I lean against a tree, check the knife, wipe the blood, my arm trembling a little from the sudden effort. This is not training. This is killing. The weight of taking a life and the smell of death pressed through the handle of the knife and the air around me. The second time, 3 goblins. I drop one with the bow first. Hans nerves up and uses his short bow to distract another, buying me time to close with the sword. But the third, mad from its companion's deaths, swings a wooden club studded with a sharp stone wildly, and in the narrow rocky space I cannot fully dodge. The club tears my left arm open. The leather rips, blood runs. I trade injury for life and stab forward and pierce the throat of the third. The cut is shallow but burns. Hans hurries to clean and bandage it with herbs, his face paler than mine from fear. Big brother, you are bleeding. Small wound, I gasp, looking at the 3 green bodies on the ground, more shaken than hurt. 3 goblins versus 2 of us was a much harder fight. Cooperation, terrain, and luck all mattered. I understand my current limits a lot better. 20 goblins lying in their nest. I push down a small cold in my chest. We pocket the ears and a few dirty copper coins and a dull blue glass shard, probably chipped from some stolen jewelry, from the bodies. The hunts continue. The ear count grows. The wound on my left arm scabs into a dark red knot. My motions sharpen. The last trace of trained stiffness gone. Even a streak of vicious determination showing. Hans is no longer a burden. His simple traps and snares catch a goblin once, and his throwing stone aim is better. Ode looks at the bloodied ears we bring back, listens to the detail of each encounter. He nods occasionally, more often offers a sharp correction. You hesitated here. You should have opened the carotid, not stabbed the gut. Your terrain was poor. That bent tree on the left was perfect cover, and you hid in the open. Hans, why shout when throwing a stone? Are you afraid they will not know where you are? His words are stern and they sharpen. That night I sleep deep. Intense training and daytime hunting drain me out. Inside the hut, only Hans's soft snoring and the occasional crackle of the hearth. Then a dream comes. Not the usual blurry fragments. Unusually clear, with a cold glassy feel like looking through ice. I see myself in a dark damp cave, strong musty stench, bones and debris on the rough wet floor. Deep inside, a small dying fire flickers, lighting a tall muscular green figure, taller than any goblin I have seen, sitting on a stone and skin throne. It wears a crooked rusted iron helmet and gnaws a large thigh bone. My vision is pulled in close to its dirty sharp claws. On its right hand, on one relatively cleaner finger, there is a ring. The band looks like dull colorless metal, possibly once silver, the face set with a gemstone. Even in that dark dirty place, the gemstone leaks a strange reddish glow from inside, like dried blood or dying embers. Faint but persistent, as if alive. A cold message flows directly into my mind. Bloodstone ring. Effect. Once a day, it can block or deflect one serious or deadly physical attack aimed at the wearer. After the effect triggers, the gemstone dims completely and only recovers after dawn the next day. The scene shatters and rewires. I see myself fighting the big goblin in the cave, a blade or arrow about to land vital, and a faint blood-red shimmer flickers between, deflecting it with a grating sound. The goblin laughs wildly and swings a heavy stone axe at me. Dream blurs. I jerk awake on my haybed, heart pounding, cold sweat soaking through. The hut is dark, only faint snowlight at the window. Not a dream. The premonition. The time has come. I touch my left arm by instinct. The wound there is healed, only a faint scar that itches a little. But the dark red glow of the ring and the strange deflection are etched in my mind. Once a day. My breathing slows and my eyes catch sharp in the dark. If the warning is true, then the biggest risk in attacking the nest is the ring-wearing big goblin. A deadly hit nullified could turn the battle. But on the other hand, if I get that ring, every day from then on offers me one extra life. Beyond priceless in this world. But the premonition only shows the existence and the effect, not how to get it. Charge the nest directly. Fight 20 goblins plus a ring-protected leader. Try to grab the ring cleanly. Too risky, almost suicide. Maybe drop the leader after it triggers its effect, or lure it out of the nest. I get up quietly without waking Hans, walk to the water barrel and splash cold water on my face. Outside the sky is thick dark blue, still far from dawn. I sit by the hearth, poking the embers with a thin branch. Sparks flicker and die. I have to have that ring. Not only to remove the biggest threat in the nest fight, but because the ring itself is a treasure. One life-saving chance every day is invaluable. The last embers go out and the hut sinks into full darkness. Only the planning glow in my eyes is left. The night is long. The plan to seize the bloodstone ring is now a sharp seed planted in my chest, waiting for the right moment to sprout. Training continues. Hunts continue. Now I have a very clear new goal. In the final days of Frostmoon, the real winter shows its teeth. The sky is no longer lead gray, but a heavy indigo that looks ready to freeze whatever lives under it. The wind has stopped howling and become a steady low moan, like the breath of a dying beast, sweeping the thatch and bare branches of Chrome's village, stealing the last warmth. The snow has hardened, crunches painfully underfoot, shines a cold gray white. The air is dry and sharp, like biting ice in the lungs. The cold has become more terrifying than any beast. It also forces the hungry creatures of the forest into desperate risks. Ode's face grows more serious by the day. He no longer pushes us on basic endurance and strength. All of it now is brutal combat simulation. The colder it gets, the hungrier and crazier the things in the woods. He stands wrapped in a heavy bear fur cloak in the yard, breath freezing into mist. Goblin hunger is unstoppable. They will scatter like locusts looking for anything to eat. They will range farther than usual, closer to the village. His eyes sweep me and Hans, faces red and tight from cold. Your hunts must stop. I feel a chill. Village chief, you mean they might. Not might, will, he cuts in, tapping the frozen ground with his cane. Those green creatures are not smart, but they have good noses and long grudges. You have killed many of theirs. They may not know exactly who, but they remember the smell of human blood. They stayed deep in the forest because there was enough food, and they were afraid of dying. But now, he does not finish. Hunger and cold will overpower fear and push them right up against human settlements. The nest, Hans whispers, fear and a fierce desperation in his eyes. The nest must be destroyed, but we cannot wait for them to come to us. Ode's dull eyes flash sharp. Waiting passively is foolish. We strike first, when they are hungriest, most scattered, and most irritable. The training that follows turns up several notches. He drops 2 sets of tattered, dirty leather armor and coarse cloth garments at our feet, all smelling strongly of mold and animal. Put these on, he orders. Hans pinches his nose at a faded, suspiciously stained leather vest and asks what these are. Goblin smell, Ode says expressionlessly. They have sharp eyes and a better nose. Snow-hiding footprints is not enough. You also need to confuse their nose. Wear these outside. Roll in rotten wood and animal droppings. Stop looking so clean. I do not hesitate and put the foul vest on over my clothes. The smell of rotting meat and swamp mud hits me hard. Hans grimaces and copies me. We become moving smell sources, drilling stealth and ambush in a simulated forest in the yard, weaving between the firewood pile and the rack of torn rags, under Ode's commands. The focus is no longer the kill itself, but how to approach quietly through the masking stench of one's own disguise, strike deadly, and retreat without leaving obvious traces leading to a human hunter. Walk softly but do not tiptoe, he barks. Use the whole foot like a fox. Gently down, slowly press. Control your breath. Do not pant like a bellows or you will be spotted from 10 steps. Do not stare at one point. Use peripheral vision. Goblins like to jump from low paths and shadow. Hans, your job is to watch and cover the rear. Look both ways, check behind. Listen. Anything strange, warn me right away, then run to the escape point. Do not look back. Ode's voice is sharp in the cold air. He drags his lame leg but appears from unexpected angles. With a cloth-wrapped stick or a piece of firewood, he mimics crude, vicious goblin attacks, stabbing eyes, teasing sensitive spots, kicking ankles. Hans and I rack up more bruises, but we move faster, stealthier, fiercer. We start staying calm in the foul-smelling air, instinctively choosing the most efficient attack lines and escape routes in narrow, chaotic spaces. Archery adapts to extreme conditions. Ode makes me shoot immediately after sprinting, aiming through a hammering heart and labored breathing. He has me shoot against the wind and calculate the drift. Even at dusk, when the light dies, he lights a smoking pile of damp wood and forces me to shoot moving targets through the smoke. The forest is not particular, he growls under the dull thump of his stick. You may finish a sprint with no breath and have to shoot. There may be wind or heavy snow or smoke or fog. The enemy will not wait. My arms swell and subside repeatedly. Calluses break and harden into thicker calluses. Yet my arrows, even bouncing in the wind, in dim evening light become more stable on target. It is not just accuracy, it is forcing the arrow to land on the enemy through every kind of interference. The system pings, archery now level 4, with growing experience, significantly improved shooting stability under harsh environments and pressure. Curved knife mastery now level 3. In complex environments, close combat is becoming more skilled, reactions to sudden attacks faster, strength 1.32 to 3.4, agility 1.44 to 4.6, constitution 1.2224. The growth is not just numbers on a panel. I feel my muscles becoming firmer in the cold, and fatigue like tight bowstrings. My sense of danger becomes clearer, like a dusty mirror wiped clean again and again. Hans changes more visibly. The fear in his eyes is replaced by a tense alertness, and his hands no longer tremble on the knife. When setting traps and reading tracks, he shows skill beyond his age. The snow stops and starts again, covering all traces and leaving new cold behind. Chrome's village huddles, the villagers indoors, relying on limited stores and firewood. Few notice the brutal training day after day at the western yard or the increasingly strong mixed smell of sweat, blood, and rotten wood that hangs on two boys. During a break in training, Ode calls us inside. The only warmth is the flickering fire. He pulls out a rough clay jar of thick dark green paste, sharp pungent herbs and minerals boiled together. Apply it on all exposed skin, he orders. Swamp peat and insect-repelling herbs. It hides most of the human scent. It works against goblins. It is stinky and hard to wash off. We slather the paste on. Cold and greasy, an even stronger smell than the clothes, and our skin feels sealed beneath it. 3 days left, he says, looking at us. No matter how much you have trained, you have to move in 3 days. The weather will not warm up. The goblins will only get hungrier. We cannot wait for them to smell the village meat first. He walks to the wall map, circles the nest in charcoal, draws a couple of winding lines around it. New route. Do not take the usual creek. Ice is too slippery and gives away your position. Take this one on the leeward side, snow thick. Prince shallow, retreat through here to the rocks. Goblins are short and cannot run fast over rocks. He moves his finger across the map. Hans, you stay at this fork. Set the last tripwires and alarm traps as I taught you. Then hide here, an unremarkable hollow. No matter what happens inside, unless you hear my 3 short whistles where you see Marin come out, you do not move. No noise. Do not enter. Your job is to secure the escape route. Hans nods hard, face tight with focus. Marin, you go in, Oda says, turning to me with a firm look. Your target is the big one with the ring. Ignore the others. If you get a chance, focus on bringing it down first. Do not fight head on. Use speed. Find openings. Strike once. Retreat if you miss. Create chaos. He pauses, voice deepening. Inside the nest is unknown. What you see might not be everything, and might not be accurate. There may be traps or other dangerous things. Eyes sharp, ears sharp. If something feels wrong, withdraw immediately. Your life is more important than the ring. More than anything, I nod, memorizing every mark on the map and every word he says. My heart beats steady and strong in my chest. Not fear, cold excitement before the real fight. 3 days, the last training. In the small hut, I check each piece of gear. The dagger gleams faintly as I touch it up on the stone. The bowstring re-waxed and snug. Every arrow shaft, feather, tip, checked and checked again. The armor's buckles and stitches reinforced. The foul camouflage ointment sealed up. Hans cleans his short knife and checks the ropes and sharpened sticks for traps. He silently recites Ode's signals. Outside, cold wind drives tiny snowflakes against the glass with a scratching sound, like small claws. The misty forest in the distance looks like a sleeping, hungry beast under the dull light, slowly waking. In 3 days, we walk willingly into its mouth. Not for glory, not for gold. To stay ahead of winter's sharp teeth biting through the village fence. To remove the most dangerous fang near the throat first. Pre-dawn freezing rain turns to fine snow, silently covering Chrome's village. Icicles hang from the eaves like the sharp teeth of wild beasts. At the edge of the woods, fog and snow dust blend until visibility drops to 20 or 30 steps. The wind pierces through every layer, stealing heat and leaving a numb prickling under my skin. In Ode's small yard, the day's training has already started. No shouts, no curses, only heavy breathing, the crunch of leather boots in deep snow, the dull thuds of sticks and curved knives kissing each other. Hans and I move through the powder and clothes soaked through with sweat and disguise stench. The old man's demands have only sharpened. He no longer fights me himself. He leans on the door frame, squints, and mutters a few words at a time. Left 3, behind a tree, I instinctively dart toward the 3rd frost-covered birch on my front left, while flicking my knife at the empty space beside me. Almost at the same moment, a cloth-wrapped stick whips out from a hidden mechanism behind the firewood pile and sweeps past my back. Half a second slower, and it would have hit me solid. Upwind. Arrow. Hans at his alert post, looks up, faces the falling snow, drags his small bow back with effort. His fingers are stiff from the cold, but his arrow crookedly cuts toward a frozen rabbit carcass hanging on a far branch. Off by 2 feet, but the read and reaction are right. Retreat. Line B. Break. Ode's commands are cold and sharp as ice shards. I fake one more knife cut, crouch low without hesitation, retreat along an inconspicuous track I scuffed in the snow myself. Hans throws a wrapped piece of wood in the other direction to make noise. grabs a short spear with a cloth tip, and as I rush past, he turns and follows, eyes fixed behind us. We reach the designated evacuation point at the base of the yard wall, lean against the cold earth, and gasp, white mist piling out of our mouths. Ode hobbles over on his cane, looks at our retreat trail, the prints messy but mostly riding on snowblown or animal-marked ground. Hard to follow. "That will do," he comments, his gaze sweeping my trembling right arm and Hans's flushed face. "Remember this feeling. In the woods, cold, exhaustion, and fear are deadly. You have to learn to live inside them." He looks at the gray sky. The snow will not stop anytime soon. Those green-skinned creatures, it is time for them to come looking for food. He calls it right. The cold and the endless snow are invisible whips driving hungry goblins out of warm nests toward the edges where food is scarcer. Hans and I have to expand our hunting circle deeper into the misty forest, and camouflage matters more than ever. Dark charcoal and fat paste on our faces, torn cloth stained with dry leaves and moss and snow mud over our backs. Two silent shadows moving with the terrain and the fog. Hunting is harder and more dangerous now. Goblins no longer appear only in pairs. Sometimes a group of 3 or 5 comes out, searching more carefully. They rummage in rotten roots under fallen trees, dig shallow snow nests, claw at frozen soil for insect eggs or tubers. Their sharp screams echo through the forest, showing how impatient and greedy they have become. In one ambush, my arrow takes a lone goblin's neck, but its dying scream pulls in 3 more nearby. We fight retreating, using preset tripwires and snowballs stuffed with sharp flint that Hans hurls to slow the pursuit. When my curved knife blocks a rough wooden club, the shock numbs my hand and the blade chips on the coarse stone axe of the enemy. Another time we are tracking 4 goblins and almost walk straight into another group sneaking up the flank. It is my sharpening sense, an unfussy braid of hearing, sight, and an indescribable instinct that catches Hans's arm just in time. We hide behind ice-crusted bushes holding our breath, while small green figures curse and rummage through bearberry bushes less than 10 steps away. Every encounter is a dance on the edge of death. Arrow whistles, dull blade impacts, dying goblin shrieks, our own heaving breath and pounding hearts, all braided with cold and exhaustion and tension, hammer our nerves over and over. The wounds pile up. My left arm gets cut by a stone, Hans's forehead grazed by flying debris, but our eyes settle into something calmer and sharper. The panel updates almost constantly. Archery now level 4 with more than 300 experience banked, quick aim and decisiveness in many battles improving stability. Curved blade mastery level 3, experience climbing through fights against multiple enemies and sudden attacks. Footwork and counter smoother. Strength 1.34 to 3.5. Agility 1.46 to 4.7. Constitution 1.24 to 2.5. Spirit 1 notch closer to 2.11. Focus and awareness growing under life and death pressure. Hans gets his own follower entries. Short weapon mastery level 1. Wilderness survival level 1. Alertness level 1. The bag of pointed ears at our belts gets heavier. I feel little joy. The goblin range is moving closer to the village. The nearest encounter is less than 3 miles out from Chrome's. That is not a good sign. One afternoon, the snow temporarily stops, but the sky stays gloomy. We push upstream along an icy creek where the ground is higher and sheltered, and there are deer signs. The terrain on both sides is snow-covered rock and sparse conifer. Quiet, only the hiss of wind over ice and the crunch of snow underfoot. I signal Hans to watch the right. Something is wrong. There are scratches in the snow, not from small animals. We slow, hide behind rocks and trunks, and creep up. The tracks are fresh, not yet frozen over. Then I see them, messy, larger and deeper than goblin tracks, clear paw prints, canine, overlapping at least 6 or 7 sizable creatures. Wolves. I crouch and look closer. The tracks lead upstream along the creek and vanish behind a pile of rocks. I move closer, use the knife tip to push snow off the edge of one print. Beneath, the soil shows faint dark red, not fresh, frozen already, but blood. More than one group, Hans whispers, pointing. Another set of footprints, smaller and scattered. Goblin. The 2 sets cross and even overlap on the open ice nearby. The snow is trampled badly with clumps of gray-black wolf fur and a small torn green rag. They met, I say softly, eyes sweeping. No fresh bodies, so the fight was not full, or one side ran fast. But the footprints, fur, and rag make it clear they did not pass quietly. My heart picks up. Goblins and wolves. 2 starving winter predators with overlapping territory in this valley. A current under the ice quietly surfaces in my head. Ode said goblins hold grudges and respect strength. Wolves hold grudges harder, especially in lean seasons. If these 2 parties have already clashed, I signal Hans back. We retreat to a windbreak overlooking the upper valley. Brother, are you thinking? Hans is not stupid, he reads my expression. The wolf pack is big and seems angry. I look upstream where jagged rocks and complex terrain make an ideal den. The goblins are getting pushed closer to the village. Food is harder to find. They ran into the wolves here and took a small loss. He follows me without me finishing. When 2 parties fight, the third benefits. The old village saying. But how do we make them fight? And are wolves not fiercer than goblins? He swallows. No need for us, I say flatly. They have already clashed. We just add fuel and lead them together. Or when they meet again on their own, we help things along. I need more information. Pack size, the Alpha's habits, where the den is, goblin patrol routes, and how interested the squads are in this valley. Most of all, whether the ring-wearing big goblin can be lured out. Over the next 2 days, the plans quietly change. We still hunt lone goblins, but more secretly, leaving fewer human traces, using knives instead of arrows when we can. At the same time, we observe the valley and the nest from distance with extra care. The wolf pack runs 8 to 10 strong, small but tough. The alpha is a large gray-black male with a notch in his left ear and a fierce stare. The wolves have made a hidden rocky crevice upstream of the valley their temporary base. The goblins are interested in this area. At least twice we see squads of 5 or more carrying simple ropes and sharpened sticks, trying to set traps near the valley, aiming at the wolves or any animal coming to drink. The wolves are too alert and the plans fail. Instead, there are signs of conflict, scattered sticks and clear wolf droppings as warnings. The tension between the two groups is growing under the pressure of a hungry winter. At night, I lay out my mental model of everything we have seen. A bold and risky plan slowly takes shape. It depends on timing, on each side's habits, on a bit of luck, and on the nerve Hans and I have to walk the edge. I check the homemade firebomb wrapped in old cloth made from a broken clay jar packed with flammable pine resin and oilcloth. I look at the 2 small bags of pungent powder Ode gave me, wrapped in oil-proof leather paper. Beast droppings and spicy herbs dried and ground, capable of strongly hitting most animals' sense of smell. Animal repellent powder, but it can also attract animals, he said, his dull eyes flat. Use as you see fit. I tucked the firebomb and the powder away, my gaze drifting toward the dark misty forest as though I could see through to the cave with the blood-red ring and the brutal fire about to ignite between beasts and green skins. Snow falls again, fine and cold. The plan is set, only waiting for the right wind, or perhaps a carefully guided snowstorm. On the 3rd evening after the snow stops, the sky looks sickly yellow, like old parchment smoked over. The wind briefly pauses, and the silence in the woods becomes thick and heavy, as if the whole forest is holding its breath. Hans and I lie behind a snowbank about 100 steps from the Goblin Cave entrance, sheltered from the wind. We wear heavy rough cloth that smells of disguise and white mud, blending almost perfectly into the snow. Thin wooden strips in our mouths stop our teeth from chattering, and we breathe as quietly as we can. After 2 days of careful watching and planning, we have finally pushed the trap to the brink. The foul powder was divided into 2 batches. The stronger batch we smeared on the bodies of 2 recently killed goblins from an ambush we set the night before. The bodies still fresh. I dragged the green corpses to a prominent rock upstream in the creek valley, downwind of the wolf camp. The other batch Hans scattered carefully yesterday afternoon, carried by the wind along the paths goblins use near the cave entrance and in the dirty corners where they dumped trash. The amount small but enough for sharp-nosed wolves to smell a strange, irritating trail leading back to the cave. The plan is simple but dangerous. Enraged, scent-treated goblin corpses pull the wolves in. The scent trail subtly guides their fury toward the cave. The goblins will be furious to find their dead destroyed or eaten by wolves. Hunger and territory will do the rest. We do not need a full battle, just chaos that pulls every eye to one place. And now it is here. Behind the crooked wooden fence at the cave entrance, the screams are louder and sharper than usual. A few goblins carry tattered baskets out, cursing and muttering. They prowl near the entrance, small red eyes glittering with impatience and ferocity. One is unusually large, a rusty deformed iron helmet on his head, a heavy wooden club studded at the top with a rough stone in his hand, snapping commands at the others. It is him. Even at this distance I can feel the different ferocious aura. His right hand on the club reflects a dull red glow now and then. The ring. Almost at the same time, a long angry wolf howl rolls up from the valley, answered by several others, closing fast. The goblins at the entrance go restless, hurriedly trying to retreat into the hole. The big goblin in the iron helmet sharply screams to stop them. He raises his club and growls back toward the howls. The others gather their nerve, raising clubs, stone axes, and sharpened spears, baring their teeth from behind the fence at the approaching sounds. Here they come. The first to appear are several swift gray shapes in the snowy woods. 8 wolves, led by the one-eared giant, fangs white in the dull light. The pack is clearly starving and aggressive, fur bristling, low growls in their throats. Their target is obvious, the goblins in front of the cave, emitting a furious aura, and probably a memory of stolen food, fuels the wolves' rage. The alpha howls the attack. The big goblin in the helmet screams the charge. The wooden fence is pushed open. More than 15 goblins led by the helmeted leader swing stone axes and clubs and spears and roar forward. The wolves respond without hesitation, spreading out, using speed and pack teamwork to lunge from the flanks. A primitive bloody battle breaks out in the snow in front of the cave. Roars, snarls, the dull thuds of bones and flesh colliding, the tearing of teeth into skin. Green and red blood spatter the snow and freeze fast into ugly patches. The goblins fight wildly with numbers and crude weapons, the wolves with agility and coordinated leg attacks. A goblin goes down with his throat torn. A wolf takes wooden spears in the ribs and rolls howling. I keep my eyes on the heart of the brawl. The big goblin is unusually brave and fierce. He swings the heavy stone club with skill, batting back a wolf that charges him, then turns to slam down a wolf trying his flank, possibly half mad and biting at allies. His old leather armor turns wolf claws aside more than once. When he swings, a dark red glow flickers occasionally across his body. The alpha is clever and fierce. He does not fight the leader head-on. He directs the pack to harass other goblins, fishing for chaos in an opening. He lunges and almost takes the leader's ankle. The stone club crashes in just in time, leaving a wolf back smeared bloody. The window is closing fast. I nudge Hans gently. He understands and slowly takes my purple wood bow off my back and hands me an arrow from the quiver. His hands are steady, eyes locked on the battlefield below. I take the bow, fingers brushing the cold string and feathers. I breathe in cold air and slowly let the stale air out, settling into Ode's hunting calm. The fighting noise, the smell of blood, the fear of death, all of it filters through some invisible barrier and quiets. In my sight, only 2 targets remain, the ring-wearing leader's raised right hand, and the flank of the alpha that will be exposed on his next attack. I draw slowly. Muscles flow with familiar steady strength. The wind is almost still. The target's about 80 steps off. They are moving in the chaos, but their motion leaves clues. The big goblin has just batted back a wolf and is raising the club to crush a struggling comrade, possibly to show strength, or out of pure madness. His upper body is fully exposed and his right hand is relatively still. Now, the faint hum of the released string is swallowed by the noise below. The arrow flies as a near-invisible gray shadow through the dusk air. The metal head punches into the weak spot just above the goblin's right armpit, where the old leather armor does not cover. The impact tilts him half a turn, his stone club misses its target, and he crashes onto the snow. He lets out a furious, painful roar, clutching the wound instinctively with his left hand. Almost the same instant, the alpha senses the leader's vulnerability and kicks off the snow with his hind legs, a streak of gray lightning lunging at the unguarded left side of the goblin's neck. Killing strike. My second arrow is already on the string. I draw fast. Eyes cold and steady, locked on the gray streak. The big goblin is slow to react under pain and rage. As the wolf lunges, he barely manages to twist his injured right arm and body. The wolf's teeth bite hard at the joint of shoulder and neck. Just as they meet the green skin, a thin transparent ripple suddenly appears on the goblin's surface like a layer of solidified bloodlight. A harsh scraping sound rings out. The wolf's teeth catch on a slick, tough gel-like surface, and an invisible force pushes them aside. No flesh tears, only a few deep scratches on the old leather. The wolf stumbles on landing. The ring's protection worked. It blocked what would have shredded its neck, but the big goblin is also paying for it. The shield seems to drain a lot of his energy. With the arrow wound in his right arm, his movement noticeably slows. Fear flickers in his eyes for the first time. The alpha is even more furious at the strange shimmer. He shakes his head, scarlet eyes fixed on the staggering green leader. His leg muscles tense for another mad attack. He never gets the chance. I release the second arrow. The timing is perfect. The wolf is winded from his previous lunge, and his attention is fully on the strange defense. The arrow whistles in silently from behind, and the side and pierces the gap between his ribs, slanting upward into his chest. The alpha's charge becomes a useless leap forward. He drops in the snow, twitches, gasps. Dark red blood pours from his mouth and nose, and wounds, quickly staining a wide patch red. The wolf pack falls into chaos. Their leader's sudden death yanks command out from under them. The attack falls apart. Several wolves panic and retreat, whining anxiously. The goblins are stunned. They saw their powerful leader mysteriously shot in the arm, and then watched the terrifying alpha killed by arrows from unknown sources. Fear spreads like a plague. The big goblin endures the pain and screams the retreat. He drags his injured arm and bolts, terrified, toward the entrance of the nest. All notions of leadership and dignity in the protective ring evaporate against a deadly unknown threat. As the leader flees, the demoralized goblins lose their minds and scatter. Some follow into the cave, others run wildly into the woods, dropping their weapons. The wolves let out a few reluctant howls, then tail-tucked, carry off the alpha's body and disappear into the darkening forest. A few moments earlier, the snow was full of running blood. Now it is just corpses and frozen blood patches. Silence drops over the scene. I lower the bow slowly, arm trembling from 2 quick draws. I look at the nest entrance. The big goblin has fled in panic. The ring should still be on his hand, but the inside of the cave is unknown. Hans, I whisper, voice dry from holding my breath so long. Stay here. As we agreed, listen for 3 short whistles, or wait for me to come out. If any fleeing goblins approach, scare them off with the bow. Do not fight them. Got it, big brother, Hans whispers, voice tense but firm. He knocks an arrow and watches the perimeter. I draw the curved dagger, sling the bow, and move down the snow like a quiet ghost. I cross the bloody ground quickly and reach the entrance. The wooden fence is crooked, debris everywhere. Faint, frantic screams and running come from inside but fade fast. A strong stench of feces, rot, and blood hits my nose. I slip in. The entrance is narrow, but a few steps in opens into a natural cave, maybe 30 to 40 square meters. Light is very dim, only a little daylight from the entrance, and faint glow from deeper in. maybe phosphorescence or some other light source. The floor is damp, dirty, scattered with bones, broken objects, filth. I scan quickly. No ambush signs. Only a few extinguished campfires and overturned junk. The escaped goblins must have headed deeper into the dark tunnels. My eyes settle on a slightly elevated stone platform in the center. Animal skins spread on it. A few shiny scraps. Dozens of worn silver coins. Some coppers. A few dull, low-quality stones. Several small rusted metal items. A few dirty pouches probably taken from human bodies. Clearly the leader's seat and treasure pile. In the rush, there was no time to grab everything. But the ring is not here. My heart sinks. Did the leader take it and run deeper into the dark? Chasing a wounded ring-protected leader in unknown tunnels is suicide. I'm about to start sifting the scattered items when from deep inside the cave a short, sharp scream cuts off abruptly, like someone choked. Then a few more distant, frightened screams that quickly disappear. Something is wrong. I drop the search and move fast forward. I sweep the silver and pouches into my bag with the knife, grab two of the largest dark stones that show a faint metallic reaction. The whole action takes less than 5 breaths. Just as I turn to leave, I catch a faint reflection of dark red at the shattered edge of the platform. I crouch and brush dust and small bones aside with the knife tip. The ring. The band is dull, covered in dirt and a streak of dark green blood. The gemstone is dull, almost dark, only a tiny center spot still faintly glowing like a flickering spark about to die. It lies quietly as if torn off hastily or dropped. I do not hesitate. I lift it with the knife into my palm. Cold to the touch, with a texture that is neither metal nor stone. Instead of putting it on right away, I wrap it carefully in a clean piece of soft leather and tuck it deep inside the armor. I turn and rush back to the entrance. Outside, cold air floods my lungs. Hans is still on watch. He visibly relaxes when he sees me come out. I do not stop. I blow a short, urgent signal, the alert to retreat, not the casual 3 blasts, the emergency one, and we move along the pre-surveyed route fast, away from the nest in the stream valley. Hans slides down after me. We do not look back. In the deepening dusk and falling snow, we vanish silently from the edge of the blood-smelling forest. Once we are sure no enemies are on us, we stop behind a windbreak rock and gasp. I sit against the cold stone and unfasten the bag. About 30 silver of varied quality, a couple of small pouches with broken copper and dull glass beads, 2 small ore stones, 1 low-quality iron, 1 copper, both nearly worthless. The most precious thing is the ring wrapped in soft leather, still warm against my chest. There is no cheer, no celebration. Only exhaustion after surviving in the cold and the heavy feel of the ring in my palm. We planned an adventure, fought a bloody battle and put 2 arrows where death would have wanted them. We weakened the threat near the village, gained badly needed money, and walked away with a magical item that could change things. I look toward Chrome's village, faint lights flickering in the heavy dusk. Cold wind drives snowflakes against my sweaty face. The struggle for survival never stops. And now I have one more chip on the table. I pack up, pat Hans on the shoulder, and tell him let us go home. The 2 of us merge into the snowy night, heading toward the lights. Behind us, the forest sinks into silence as if the bloody battle never happened. Only the blood-red ring tucked against my chest hints that something invisible has begun to turn. The next morning before we set out, Ode unusually says a few extra words. His gaze sweeps the purple wood bow on my back. Wolves hold grudges, especially when the alpha is dead. They either scatter or wait until they regain strength and find a new, fiercer leader and come back for you in the village. Remember, wolves are tough and stubborn. If you cannot put one in the head, put it in the gut. The multi-tipped arrow is for your safety, not for showing off. Use it only when needed. We head into the forest. The bloodstains from yesterday have mostly been covered by fresh snow, but the messy footprints, dragged marks, and scattered fur are still clear. The wolf tracks are no longer neat. They look panicked and scattered, splitting into several groups. Most ran deeper into the woods. A few stubbornly headed upstream toward the creek, toward their den. Some wolves are still here, or have come back, Hans whispers, pointing at the fresh claw marks. I crouch. The prints vary in size, only 3 or 4 wolves. The strides are faint, with occasional drops of blood. Injured or weaker ones near the den, I judge. Let us follow. Tracking wounded animals demands extra caution. We move slow and quiet through snow-covered rocks and deadwood. I lead with the bow half-drawn and an arrow on the string, eyes hawk-sharp on every shadow. Hans follows close, short knife out, ears working all directions. Upstream in the valley, the terrain steepens, jagged rocks forming a small sheltered snow valley. The prints hesitate here and finally disappear between 2 large leaning rocks. The gap is narrow and dark, a faint foul smell seeping out, the last hideout of the remaining pack. I signal Hans behind a side rock and climb a higher rock to look down. The inside of the gap is unclear, but the snow at the mouth has been dug. Faint, heavy breathing and whimpering inside. Charging blindly is unwise. The space is too tight for archery, and close combat with a cornered, wounded wolf is reckless. I think for a moment and pull the bloodstone ring out on a leather cord. After we got back yesterday, I tried to touch the ring with my mind to activate the protective effect, and got nothing. Now I focus again, sending a faint thought toward it while I recall the faint red shimmer that appeared on the big goblin in the fight. The system identifies it. Rough bloodstone ring, low-quality iron-based alloy mixed with silver, natural bloodstone fragments. Effect: an easy-to-activate basic protective energy field. When the wearer concentrates, they can briefly activate the small amount of energy stored in the ring, forming a continuous deflective shield on the surface for about 1 second. The shield can block or weaken a limited physical impact, such as a normal sword/thrown stone, or gentle blunt force. Strength and duration depend on the wearer's focus and the ring's energy level. Charging: after the energy is used up, it needs about 6 to 8 hours in natural light, sunlight preferred, to slowly recharge. Repeated quick depletion may damage the bloodstone structure. Clear enough. I put the ring on my left index finger. The metal is cold and the band slightly loose. I try to focus on it, imagining the energy moving. Nothing at first. After holding my breath and trying several times, a tiny faint warm current touches my fingertips. At the same time, the dull blood-red gem glows faintly for a moment and returns to normal. A subtle connection forms. Inside the ring feels like a small drying pond needing sunlight to refill. Slowly. I cannot rely on it for protection right now. I push the awareness aside and turn back to the crevice in the rock. I signal Hans to ready himself. I draw a flamecloth-wrapped arrow, light the tip with a fire striker, knock, and draw. The flaming arrow arcs precisely into the pile of twigs and animal hair at the entrance of the den. Flames burst out, thick smoke rolling inside through the gap. Immediately, the den fills with terrified wolf howls, intense coughing, scratching. Smoke is the best way to drive them out. A moment later, choking and howling, 2 gray shadows rush out of the crevice in a panic. 2 adult wolves, smaller than the dead alpha. One has a noticeable limp in a back leg. The other has burn scars around an eye, a survivor of yesterday's fight. They are choked by the smoke and disoriented. They burst out without seeing. From above, I have a target already. My first arrow shoots straight at the burned-eyed wolf. The bow is fully drawn and the arrow flies fast. The wolf, just barely opening its tearing eyes, takes the arrow in the side ribs and rolls in the snow with a long, mournful cry. The limping wolf turns to run for the trees. I draw the second arrow on reflex and fire without much aim, relying on muscle memory. The arrow flies past the limping wolf's back and slams into the snow, startling it into a stumble. At that moment, a weaker whimper comes from inside the crevice. A third wolf, smaller, not fully grown, perhaps overwhelmed by smoke, lurches out. But instead of running, it goes red-eyed and charges straight at the rock where Hans is hiding. Hans has been tense the whole time. When the wolf rushes him, he stays calm. Remembering everything Ode and I taught him, he does not freeze. He rolls quickly to one side and throws the sharpened wooden spear he prepared earlier. The spear is not accurate, but it is sudden. The young wolf misses its lunge and freezes for a second. That hesitation is the difference. My third arrow lands. I draw to the full moon and the arrow flies like a falling star, piercing the wolf's neck from the side. 3 wolves, 2 dead, 1 badly wounded. The burned-eyed one is still struggling in the snow, but is not going to survive. The fight starts and ends in a flash. Only dying howls and the crackle of burning twigs remain. I jump down, check carefully around the crevice, confirm nothing else is moving. Hans runs over, pale but bright-eyed. The hand on the short knife trembles a little. Good job, I say, patting his shoulder. The dodge and spear throw earlier were perfectly timed, and gave me a crucial chance. We deal with the bodies quickly. Pelts and teeth go into the bag. The rest gets dragged off and buried. Inside the rocky crevice, there are no more living animals, only leftover bones and signs of wolf pups. I find 1 black wolf pup, alive, shivering in the back. On the way home, Hans cannot help asking, "Big brother, do we really want to raise that little wolf?" The village chief does not seem to like wolves. I look at the rough but warm wolf pelt in my hand, then at the trembling little creature against my chest. Yes, we will raise it. A wolf raised from a young age makes a fine helper. The village chief is not against wolves, he just finds them troublesome. I pause. He knows how to raise them. Sure enough, when we get back and hand the pelt and teeth to Ode, the old man only snorts and pokes the small black pup wrapped in an outer cloak. It looks even more pitiful here than in the nest. If it does not die outside, it is lucky, he says, nudging it with his cane. The little creature whimpers. If you are going to raise it, here are the rules. Do not let it eat too much. Always keep it a little hungry. When animals are full and warm, they get lazy. When hungry, they listen. He pauses. Get goat milk and warm it to feed. If no goat milk, mash some meat and mix it with porridge. Do not feed raw meat for the first few months. Easier to tame that way. Keep the nest warm but not too comfortable. Take it outside every day so it gets used to your scent, the paths, the village. If it dares bark or bite, hold its neck or press it to the ground until it submits. He speaks plain but every word lands. I listen carefully and remember it all. Life in the following days settles into a new routine. The goblin threat has eased for now, but the training does not slacken at all. With a clearer goal of mastering the chain arrow technique and a new task of raising the wolf, the days fill up. Every morning before dawn I get up. I feed myself and Hans, then run the village perimeter carrying weights in deep snow to keep building endurance. After that, swordsmanship sharpening counterattacks, combining footwork and blocking under Ode's increasingly tricky stick attacks. Archery takes the most time. Multi-arrow practice is boring and painful. Ode's rules are strict. No real arrows for these drills. Practice arrows without tips. Draw, knock, shoot, release at a target 30 steps off. Movements have to be smooth without hesitation. Rhythm steady, no rushing or dragging. Breath matched to action, no chaos. If I mess up, his staff goes mercilessly across my wrist, elbow, or back. Speed is not blind rushing. It is steady speed. Are your hands made of iron? Why are they trembling? Breathe. If your breath is off, the arrow drifts. Are you shooting at the moon? Use your waist and back. Let your body lead your arms. Do not work the arms alone. My index and middle finger blisters open and harden into thick calluses. Arms, shoulders, and back muscles ache constantly. I grit and keep practicing. The initial 4-breath, 3-arrow rhythm shortens to 3 breaths. Scattered shots move toward the center of the target. I begin to understand rhythm not as urgency but as the most efficient, direct way to move each part, making the action flow like breathing. The system updates. Archery still level 4 with experience pushing close to 400. Basic mastery of multiple arrow technique, improved speed and stability in rhythm. Strength 1.35 to 3.6. Agility 1.47 to 4.9. Constitution 1.25 to 2.6. The little black pup, whom Hans names Coalball, is struggling to adapt to the strict rules under my almost harsh discipline. It drinks warm goat milk traded with a village farmer who has sheep, paid for with a chunk of the wolf carcass. It eats mashed meat. It sleeps on dry, warm old linen. It learns the rules fast. When it first tries to chew my leather boots, it gets grabbed by the scruff and pressed to the ground until it stops struggling and whimpers. When it whines at night for no reason, it goes out into the cold for a stretch. Rewards and punishments stay clean. When it goes to the corner I designated for waste, it gets gentle petting and a small piece of dried meat. When it challenges authority, it gets pinned. Every day I walk it around the yard and the village to get it used to my scent, voice, and commands. The Coalball slowly understands that this two-legged creature is the source of food and safety, and the unquestioned leader. Its gaze on me shifts from caution to dependence and obedience. Now and then during training breaks, I raise my left hand and study the rough bloodstone ring on my index finger in the pale winter sun. I work on the mental connection. The process is still awkward, but better than the first day. I can vaguely feel the small puddle inside the ring changing in size, slowly but steadily growing under sunlight. This ring may be low tier, perhaps able to block only one strike, but at a critical moment it might be the difference between life and death. Night falls and the fire flickers in the hut. Hans in the corner clumsily but seriously practices simple lettering on a wooden board with charcoal, following the lines I drew for him. The Coalball curls up in its little nest by the fire, purring contentedly. I sit by the firelight, maintaining the bow and knife, checking each arrow's feathers and tip. Outside, the cold wind still howls, sweeping snow across the village. Inside, a strange warmth, full of busy life, is growing. Hunting, training, feeding, studying. Days pass in sweat and repetition. I can feel the rhythm of the bowstring vibrating more clearly in my fingers. The path of my knife cuts is cleaner. My connection with the cub is closer. Even a subtle sensing has formed between the cold ring on my finger and me. Winter is not over yet, but the hands gripping the bow and knife are steadier, not just because of the wind passing through them, but because of a quietly increasing strength and a faint, genuine warmth I am willing to call hope. The road ahead remains icy. I am ready to take the next step. After more than a month of the cold wind circling over Chrome's village, the air finally shows signs of fatigue. The snow has not melted, and the world is still pure white, but the brutal bone-freezing edge has eased a little. On sunny days, a pale, weak sun cuts through, and the ice on the eaves sparkles like crystal. The village hangs in deep winter, a mix of wood smoke and heavy waiting. People stay curled inside not-so-warm houses, leaning on what they stored in autumn and a thin fire. Brave villagers wrapped in bulky clothes step out on the creaking snow to draw water from the old well, or to check the cellar for the last potatoes and turnips. Their faces are carved with the long winter's exhaustion. My hut is a little different. The hearth keeps burning hot. Above it, on a hook, a pot holds either the smell of meat broth or thick porridge with chopped meat and dried mushrooms. Thanks to the Goblin Cave windfall and ongoing hunting, smarter now, snow rabbits and foxes and the occasional foraging badger we set traps for, our food stores are far richer than other villagers. Dried meat strips hang from the beams, dried fish and game tied on grass ropes, clay jars with coarse salt and precious animal fat. There is even a small bag of hard black sugar traded from a passing merchant. These supplies were earned through hard work, and they give us the room to keep training hard through the dead of winter. Training is only intensified. The snow in the yard is trampled into a hard ice crust. The broken leather armor lashed to the stakes has been replaced many times, covered with cuts and arrow marks. Ode looks determined to grind the last bit of inexperience and hesitation out of us before winter ends. My chain arrow practice gets more brutal. Ode no longer uses fixed targets. Hans runs around the yard, rolls, hides behind the firewood, and suddenly pops his head up in a torn hat. I have to judge, aim, and shoot 3 arrows in a row in a very short window. Each arrow has to pass close to a marked spot on the stakes or boards near Hans without hitting him but close enough to scare a goblin. Quick, faster. Will the enemy stand and let you aim? Waist. Is your waist made of wood? Turn. Aim where the body points. Breathe. 3 arrows in one breath. Are you holding your breath too long? Exhale. The shouting and the dull staff thuds become normal background. My calluses thicken into another layer. The skin at the thumb wears raw and scabs over and turns rough and tough, but my motion smooths out. Drawing, knocking, drawing the string, releasing. A flowing rhythm like clouds drifting. The interval between shots drops from over 3 breaths to nearly 2.5. The sounds nearly join. Accuracy at this speed naturally drops. Out of 10 arrows, 6 or 7 graze close, which by old standards is impressive. Archery climbs near level 5, stability much improved on fast-moving targets. The rhythm of rapid shots is becoming muscle memory. Curved sword mastery climbs into the middle of level 3, dodging and countering in complex terrain stronger. Strength 1.36 to 3.7. Agility 1.49 to 5.1. Constitution 1.26 to 2.7. And then an invisible stagnation quietly settles over me. I can feel that the strength of my draw, the speed of my swing, the agility of my dodges are all steadily improving, yet the progress is slowing, getting sticky like running into an invisible wall. No matter how hard I push, I cannot gain ground. Every practice still has me sweating and aching, but the clear sense of progress is dimming. The body has adapted to this level of training and needs a more intense challenge, a hotter forge for a new edge. I have hit a bottleneck. Ode has vaguely mentioned before that skill refinement starts fast, but past a certain point requires drawing blood, facing real danger, fighting for survival, pushing every ounce of potential against death to break through. Regular training is no longer enough. During a break, I wipe sweat off my forehead and look at Hans chopping at wooden stakes, then at the distant silent snow-covered forest. Village chief, I say suddenly. Once the snow melts enough and the roads are clearer, I plan to go to Whitestone and pauses, turning his dull yellow eyes to me. To town. To buy salt or sell hides. Register as an adventurer, I reply calmly. The yard goes instantly silent. Even Hans stops chopping and turns around, surprise on his face. Ode does not speak, only keeps slowly sharpening the dagger, a regular scratch. After a while, he asks lazily, "Cannot stay in the village anymore." No, I shake my head. The village is good, but here is too small. I point to the bow and knife. What you taught me, killing goblins, fighting wolves, guarding the house, is enough. But I want to see a bigger world, find stronger enemies. Understand, I pause, choosing words, understand how far I can go with these skills. I also want to give Hans a different future. Hans's eyes light up and his fingers tighten on the wooden sword. Ode lifts the dagger to his eye and looks at the blade in the light. Adventurer, he chews on the word, his tone neutral. Blood on the blade. Today's trouble, tomorrow's unknown. You might die in some cave and no one finds your body. 10 or 100 times more dangerous than hunting in the village. I know, I nod, but the chances are also 10 or 100 times greater. At least I can earn money faster, buy better gear, learn stronger skills. I glance at Hans. Staying here, Hans will grow into a good hunter at most. If I go out, maybe I can become a warrior. Even a knight. I say the last 2 words soft, but in the quiet yard they land big. A knight, an elite position nobles hold, the highest a commoner can dream of. For someone like Hans, a peasant boy, an unimaginable dream. Ode is silent, gaze moving between me and Hans. After a long moment he sighs. The sigh carries a tangle of feelings, certainty, faint loneliness, a touch of relief. Once your wings are strong, you have to fly, he says, sheathing the dagger. His voice returns to its usual flat tone. If you want to go, go. The Adventurers Guild in Whitestone Town is at the east end of the market. The registration fee is not cheap, but you have those greenskin ears, it should be enough. Do not foolishly take every quest you see. Start with the simplest ones, get familiar with the rules, weigh your strength. He stands, limps to the eaves, picks up his long purple wood bow leaning against the wall, and tosses it to me. This bow has been with me for over 10 years. I have used it to kill goblins, to hunt orcs, and it has saved my life. Now it is yours. Use it well and do not tarnish its name. I take it. The weight in my hand is not just physical, it is the weight of a serious trust. I nod firmly. I will do my best, village chief. He turns to Hans, eyes hardening. Your older brother is taking you out to see the world. Whether it goes well depends on your luck. With your current skills, you will only hold him back in town. Starting tomorrow, your training doubles. Do not think that chopping a few logs is enough. In real danger, one small mistake costs your life. Hans puffs out his thin chest and loudly says, "Yes, Grandpa Village Chief. I will train hard." Ode waves him off as if shooing flies. "All right, do what you need to do. If you are leaving, it is not for now. Spring is the time to go. Now, back to practice." The training continues, but the mood is different. Hans's eyes shine with a new fiery determination. Every swing of his sword more forceful. My heart feels like a stone dropped into a pond, ripples spreading. Whitestone Town, adventurers. A bigger world, stronger enemies. Those words turn over and over in my head, mixing excitement, nervousness, and ambition. That night, the small hut is warm with firelight. Coalball has grown a little bigger and clumsily runs around Hans's feet, sometimes biting at him until I pick it up and scold it. Mostly it is obedient. It seems to see this place as its new home, and Hans and me as its tribe. After dinner, Hans plays with a bone, teasing Coalball, and asks, "Big brother, when we go to town, can we really become adventurers?" I heard adventurers make a lot of money, wear iron armor, and eat white bread to fill their bellies. I smile while fixing the bowstring. It is not that easy. Registering is just the first step. You start with the dirtiest, hardest, most dangerous jobs. White bread may fill the belly, but going hungry, freezing, getting hurt, and bleeding are common. He shrinks a little but stays bright-eyed. I am not afraid. Grandpa said if I train well, I will not be afraid. Big brother, what kind of jobs will we do first? We will see when we get there. Cleaning rats from the sewer, escorting merchant goods, patrolling near the town. Whitestone is the biggest settlement around. Lots of people, lots of chances, lots of risks. I have to quickly find footing, gather information, and improve my strength. The Bloodstone Ring might help in a critical moment, but I cannot rely on it. True power comes from within. One night, the last snow quietly melts away, revealing land that has been frozen all winter, now dark and moist. New shoots push out of the roots of dead grass. The wind in the woods still carries a chill but no longer bites. Instead, it brings a fresh scent of thawed earth. Spring has knocked on Chrome's village's door. I push open the door of the hut, taking a deep breath of cool air that no longer hurts. The sun on my face has a rare warmth. Hans follows, looking around with excitement, pointing at water dripping from the eaves, shouting happily. The Coalball, who has grown to the size of a small dog with shiny, sleek black fur, senses the season changing and circles restlessly at our feet, making soft growls, eager to go out. After a brutal winter of training, the changes are obvious. I am taller and broader. Wrapped in Ode's old leather armor, my shoulders and arms show real strength. The last bit of youthful roundness on my face is faded, replaced by sharp edges carved by wind, frost, and focus. My eyes are calm and sharp like polished flint. Hans is also taller, still thin, but no longer like skin on bone. His movements have a hunting cat's quickness, and his grip on the short sword is steady and strong. Only when he looks at me does his trust still show whole. Ode stands at his gate with arms crossed, watching the two of us and our wolf ready to leave. I carry the purplewood bow on my back, the curved sword at my waist, a quiver and bag swollen with supplies. Hans carries a small bow and a short spear, a short sword at his hip, and a large leather bag of belongings and food. Coalball, our wolf, seems to know we are leaving, and circles my legs with his tongue out. "Are you all packed?" Ode asks, voice still rough and calm. "Ready, village chief," I nod. The hides, dried meat, and those oars have been traded to old Tom for silver coins. Enough for a while. Ode hums softly, his gaze lingering on my bow and armor. Then on Hans and the pup, who looks quite intimidating now. "Be careful on the road. Whitestone Town is not the village. More people, more eyes, more hands. Keep your valuables hidden, speak little. Stay alert. Got it. Go now." He waves a hand, turns slowly back to the house. His back looks a little hunched. He does not look back. We take one last look at the village where we left months of sweat and memory, and turn onto the trail leading out of the mountains. Coalball cheers and runs ahead, leaving paw prints like plum blossoms in the muddy path. The road to Whitestone is not easy in spring thaw, muddy and slippery, some low spots filled with knee-high water, but we do not walk slowly. A winter of snow travel and weight-bearing made this kind of road much easier. The pup is full of energy, darting back and forth sometimes into the bushes to startle a few early spring birds. 2 days later in the evening, as the setting sun paints the western mountains golden red, we finally see Whitestone Town's outline. It is built along the mountainside, surrounded by tall walls. The walls are not new. Many spots show repairs and weathering, moss and stains, but they are thick and solid with simple watchtowers on top. The town is more than 10 times larger than Chrome's. Rows of gray-black roofs packed tight, with a few tall stone buildings with pointed tops reaching upward. A complex smell drifts in the evening breeze, mixing cook smoke and animal waste in the forge's coal fire and greasy food. This is Whitestone Town, the only place within 100 miles that can be called a town, where adventurers, merchants, craftsmen, and refugees gather. We pay the town entrance fee of 2 copper per person. Coalball gets a longer look from the guards, but no trouble, and we step inside. The road becomes uneven, broken stone lined with crooked wooden houses. Dim lights and noisy voices spill from open doorways. The tavern sign creaks in the wind. The blacksmith's hammer rings out. The air smells of cheap beer and roasted meat. People bustle in different clothes. Hunters in thick furs, dirty linen-clad commoners, well-dressed folks with swords at their hips. Accents and shouts and bargaining and drunken mumbling all weave together into a rough, lively market noise. Hans's eyes widen and he sticks close to me. Coalball seems a little nervous from the crowd and strange smells, snuggling close to my leg with soft growls, watching everything carefully. Following Ode's rough directions, we avoid the busiest main street and turn into a narrow, damp alley. At its end stands a crooked 2-story wooden building that looks like it could fall at any moment. A blackened wooden sign hangs outside, a rough mug carved on it and blurry words below it that say flee and ale. We push the door open and warm foul air hits us. Cheap alcohol, sweat, mold, stew. The room is dim, 7 or 8 greasy wooden tables, a few customers dozing or whispering in corners. Behind the counter, a bald, red-nosed old man wipes glasses with a dirty cloth. Staying the night, he asks, eyes dull, scanning the two of us. His gaze lingers on coal ball. People and dog, 20 copper a day, includes breakfast, black bread, and oatmeal. Pay first. I count out 40 copper and place them on the greasy counter. 2 nights. The dog does not enter the rooms. It stays in the yard. The old man takes the money and throws over 2 rusty brass keys. 2 rooms at the very back upstairs. The stable and water well are out back in the yard. You will have to manage yourselves. Some noise at night is fine. Do not break anything. The room is small and cramped. Only a hard wooden bed, a crooked-legged table, a broken stool. The bedding is damp and smells suspicious. But compared to thatched cottages in Chrome's village, it at least keeps wind and rain out. We settle quickly. We tie Cobal in the yard to a dead tree. Give him water and dried meat. The next morning, after a simple breakfast of clear soup and bread, we ask for directions to the Adventurers Guild and head to the east end of town. The heavy oak door of the guild opens onto a wide hall. Yellowed maps of nearby areas cover the walls. The floor is worn tile. The most obvious feature is a large bulletin board at the end of the hall, covered in various sized parchments dense with writing. Mission notices. People gather there, whispering and copying down information. On one side, a long counter with several uniformed clerks in brown robes handles registrations and payments. On the other side, long tables and benches, where some adventurers sit resting, talking, or cleaning weapons. The air smells of leather, metal, sweat, and parchment, mixed with the invisible tension of people who live on the edge. I push my nerves down and lead hands to the counter. The clerk is a middle-aged man with a stern face who does not look up as we approach. Register, take quests, submit quests. Registering for 2, I say, placing 20 silver on the counter, roughly equivalent to 10 complete goblin ears, and 5 cleaned wrapped goblin ears beside them. The clerk finally looks up, glances at the coins and ears, then at us. He pauses briefly on Hans's young face but asks no questions. He slides over 2 rough parchments and 2 stubby feather pens. Fill out, name, age, skills, anyone who recommends you. Sign with your thumbprint. The form is simple. I fill in. Marin, 17 years old, skilled with bow and curved sword, from Chrome's village, recommended by Chrome's village guard officer Ode, retired. Hans fills in his form following my earlier instructions. Hans, 16 years old, skilled in reconnaissance and support, from Chrome's village, companion. He presses his thumbprint and the clerk takes the forms back. The clerk records us in a heavy sheepskin book and pulls 2 thin, rough-edged round iron tokens from a drawer, stamped with a crossed sword and shield design and a small F. He hands them over with 2 small palm-sized blank notebooks of poor paper. F-rank adventurer's certificate and your adventurer's log. Do not lose the certificate. You will need it to accept, complete, and receive rewards for quests, sometimes also for lodging. The log is for recording tasks and expenses. The guild may check it occasionally. F-rank adventurers can only take F-level and a few E-level quests, with 10% of the reward going to the guild. To level up, you must complete enough quests at your current rank and be evaluated by the guild. The rules are on that wall. Read them. On the 2nd floor, you can have items appraised for a fee. He pushes the items over and returns to his work. I store the cold, rough iron token and the simple log. From now on, we are at the very bottom of this large, dangerous profession. The 2 of us walk to the quest board. It is covered in sheepskin papers written in charcoal or ink, listing tasks, requirements, rewards, deadlines. The handwriting is messy, some with simple sketches. Most F-rank quests are trivial. Clear the rat problem in the east sewer of town. Must provide at least 20 rat tails. Reward 15 copper per tail. Collect 10 silverleaf herbs. Must have complete routes. Reward 20 silver. Assist night watchman patrolling the south wall. 3 nights. Reward 6 silver per night. The rewards are low and the tasks are time-consuming and tiring. E-rank quests look a little more interesting. Eliminate goblins in the abandoned mine outside town. Estimated less than 10. Reward 50 silver per person, plus extra for left goblin ears. A merchant caravan to Black Creek Village. 3-day trip. Reward 50 silver per day per person. Investigate strange noises from the old forest to the west. Reward 80 silver. I scan quickly. The goal is starting funds as fast as possible and practical experience. Caravan duty takes too long. Investigation quests are uncertain. Killing goblins has decent reward, and goblins and gnomes are close relatives with similar habits, and we have experience. An abandoned mine. Environment is more complex than an outdoor cave. I am thinking when a rough voice speaks beside us. Hey newcomer, looking for work. I turn and see two men standing beside me. The speaker is a tall, broad-shouldered, bald man with a face full of scars, in half-plate carrying a wide-bladed axe, scrutinizing me. Beside him, a shorter but equally sturdy man with dark skin, pointed ears, thick lips, deep eye sockets, and obvious orc blood. He carries a leather shield and a short-handled warhammer at his waist. Both look experienced, radiating a brave, fierce aura. Well, let us see. I nod calmly, speaking confidently but not arrogantly. Just you two and a kid. The bald one raises an eyebrow, glances at Hans, then back at the dazed pup outside in the yard. F-rank jobs are not easy. This is not child's play. We just came from the village, fighting goblins and wolves, I say evenly. No need to show fear, no need to exaggerate. Oh, the bald one looks interested and exchanges a glance with the half-orc. We are looking for a temporary partner too, he says. We have an E-rank task to clear goblin nests in the valley outside town. Intel says about 20 goblins. Just the two of us is a bit tight. You look brave enough and have decent gear. Want to join? Pay split by contribution. My head turns it over. Clearing goblin nests is familiar territory. About 20 goblins is not small, but with two experienced fighters leading the way and Hans and me supporting from behind, the risk is manageable. The reward should be much better than F-rank work. Teaming with experienced adventurers can also help me learn the rules and tricks of the work fast. How about the details and pay? I ask. The bald man points to a fresh parchment on the notice board. I read, clear goblin nests in Blackclaw Valley, northwest of Whitestone Town. Estimated 20 to 25 goblins. Requirement, at least a 4-person team with a melee specialist. Reward, total of 5 gold divided by each adventurer's level and contribution. Additionally, each adult goblin's left ear can be exchanged for 2 silver. Deadline within 10 days of acceptance. Issuer, Town Guard. Total reward 5 gold. Split 4 ways, that is 1 gold each plus ear money. Much better than the F-rank quests. So, are you in? The bald man presses. It has been up 2 days and no one else has taken it. Someone will grab it soon. I am Buck, and this is Groff. He points at the half-orc. Groff grunts as a hello. I weigh it. Risk and opportunity both. Buck and Groff do not seem entirely trustworthy, but on a first joint job under the guild's eye, they are unlikely to betray us right away. I need the money and the experience to break the bottleneck. All right, I say. My name is Marin. This is my younger brother Hans. The one outside is our hunting dog, Coalball. I offer a hand. Buck's rough palm shakes mine and he grins, yellow teeth showing. Deal. Northgate tomorrow morning. Bring your own food and tools. We scout first, then attack. After setting the time, Buck and Groff leave to prepare some things. We do not head straight back to the inn. We go to the town general store. With our limited coin, we buy essentials. A few rolls of clean linen bandages, a small jar of foul-smelling but cheap medicine, a sturdy rope, a small pack of fire tinder and flint, and enough hard bread, dried meat, and a little salt for 3 or 4 days. These items cost a fair chunk, but they are necessary. Back at the Flea and Ale, it is already late. We eat a quick dinner, still porridge and black bread, but I add 2 strips of dried meat. We check gear again, sharpen knives and arrows, and turn in early. Coalball goes quiet inside and curls up in the corner by the door, ears twitching at the sounds outside. I lie on the hard bed listening to Hans's steady breathing next door and the faint noise of the town at night through the window. Yet I cannot fall asleep. It is not nerves or excitement. It is a long-dormant, vague warning about the future suddenly striking me again. This time the clear images about the ring are gone. Instead, there are broken, chaotic, oppressive fragments full of strong unease. A dark, damp cave larger than the goblin nest, filled with a stronger, foul smell. A pair of non-human, cruel yellow eyes suddenly lighting in the dark. A tall, muscular green figure with skin like a small calf, wielding a rough wooden club studded with iron spikes, far larger than a normal goblin. The club strikes down with a deafening rush of wind, shattering hard rock on the ground. The scene flashes Buck's terrified face, then Groff's wooden shield breaking under a heavy blow, and finally a tall green-skinned monster leaning down, seemingly gnawing on something, with creepy chewing sounds. Behind its neck, a patch of dark red coarse hair, different from a normal goblin. The scene cuts off. I open my eyes in the dark, sitting up. My heart pounds and cold sweat beads on my forehead. Not a goblin. Something more dangerous. Similar to goblins but stronger, more violent. Ode mentioned a bear goblin once, a mutated type that occasionally appears in goblin groups, far stronger and more savage. Is the mission intel wrong, or has this creature only recently appeared? That nest hides a bear goblin. The warning in my dream came too late, only dangerous images. Did we encounter it during scouting, or did it ambush during the siege? I get out of bed quietly and walk to the window, the cold night wind helping me calm down. I cannot retreat. I have already taken the task. Running away now would ruin my reputation and might make Buck and Groff hold a grudge. The warning, terrifying as it is, exposes the danger early. Knowing allows me to prepare. I have to change the plan. Tomorrow during reconnaissance, I must be extra careful to confirm the creature's presence and location. In battle, I must prioritize dealing with it, or create an opportunity for the goblins, or even Buck and the half-orc to face it first. My eyes flicker in the dark. I touch my left index finger, where the rough bloodstone ring rests cold but with the energy recovered. I look again at the purplewood longbow leaning against the wall. The warning is both a danger and an opportunity. If we can kill a bear goblin, the reward and reputation would far exceed ordinary goblins. Of course, the key is that we have to survive. I lie back down and force myself to sleep. My mind keeps running through scenarios. Hans needs more careful protection. His sharper sense of smell might warn us early. Buck and Groff could be shields or unpredictable factors. Outside, the town's lights gradually go out, only the faint sound of a night watchman's bell reaching me. The long winter night has passed, but the real adventure with blood and signs of the unknown is just beginning. Morning light is like a dull knife, barely cutting through the gray fog hanging over Black Claw Valley. The light struggles through the thick moisture, turning the jagged rocks and crooked dead trees in the valley into blurry dark shadows. The wind is the only lively thing here, tirelessly weaving through the rock cracks, whimpering softly, stirring the damp, decaying leaves on the ground, and carrying a faint, persistent smell of blood and rot. The odor of many dirty creatures that have lived here a long time, seeping into the soil and rock. I crouch in the shadow of a windbreak rock, its rough surface pressed against my old leather armor, cold and hard. I slowly adjust my breathing, filling my lungs with cold, damp air and exhaling slowly, suppressing the restless urge for loot and the deep-seated road fatigue in my muscles. The things Ode drilled into me over the past months now stir like a sleeping beast deep in my senses. My eyes scan every fold of the valley, ears working for any sound besides the wind. Lower on my left, Hans is hidden behind a bush of frost-covered thorns. His red cheeks pressed close to his bow arm, his breath in small white clouds. His eyes track my every movement. His fingers grip the short bow, tight, white-knuckled, but steady. At his feet, the wolf pup we call Coalball is already showing the build of a young wolf. Gray-black fur low to the damp ground, ears twitching, nostrils flaring at the air, giving a low warning growl at the strange smell that makes the fur on his back stand on end. Further ahead, behind a pile of rocks, faint sounds of metal and leather rubbing together, low anxious murmurs. Groff the half-beast is checking his leather shield one last time, inspecting each strap and the edge. In the center of the shield is a dry blackened bloodstain, unknown which creature it came from, looking like a fierce eye in the dim light. Bald Buck impatiently sharpens his wide-bladed axe with the whetstone, the harsh screech echoing. His eyes keep darting at the deep valley where the foul smell pours from. That place marks 5 shining gold and 2 silver per ear, enough to keep him from worrying about cheap ale and moldy bread for half a year. Our target is just a few steps ahead, an irregular hole in the rocky valley wall, roughly widened by rough hands, tall enough for a strong man to walk upright, wide enough for 2 or 3 to pass side by side. The entrance is piled with disgusting debris, broken bones of various sizes, some small and unpleasant to think about, rotting plant roots, torn furs of unclear color, dirty cloth strips. A few wooden stakes full of wormholes lean crookedly across, half blocking the entrance. Inside the cave, darkness is thick and almost tangible. Only a faint flickering orange light bleeds from the deepest part, embers about to die, accompanied by vague dreamlike hissing and chattering sounds drifting from the cave's throat. A typical goblin nest entrance, dirty, chaotic, exuding poverty and unhidden malice. My brow tightens almost imperceptibly. It is too quiet. Not dead silence, there are sounds inside, but they lack the usual goblin daytime chatter, endless quarrels and fights over scraps or imagined insults. Instead, it sounds like suppressed restless whispers, held down by a stronger presence. My gaze sweeps the muddy ground in front of the entrance. The dense pattern of tiny 3-toed claw marks extending forward clearly belongs to goblins. But on this chaotic carpet there are occasional different marks, deeper, wider, with blurry outlines like heavy, much larger creatures dragging through, leaving crushing impressions. Sometimes the deep impression of a blunt heel can be seen. The marks are fresh, the soil not yet hardened by the night frost. My heart beats heavily inside my chest. The strange, ominous, sticky dream from last night floats back to the surface of my mind. Yellow, cruel eyes, a green figure pressing down like a mountain, the chilling sound of a wooden club smashing rock. "Kid, have you had enough?" Buck's impatient low voice cuts the still air like a thrown stone. "Just a few short green guys, and you stare so long you expect to see a flower. Keep hesitating and the sun will be roasting your backside. 5 gold. 5, did you hear me? And those ears. 1 worth 2 silver. Have you ever seen so much money in a year of digging in village dirt?" Groff also turns his head. His dark face shows a burning desire for wealth in his deep-set orc blood eyes. For adventurers like them, struggling just to get by, this reward is dangerously tempting. Enough for a real good night in a tavern, or saving enough at the anvil and fire to replace worn-out gear. I look away from the scene and at Buck. My expression is calm, like the still water of a deep pond. The hole is too big and something is wrong inside. There are other footprints on the ground, much larger and deeper than goblin tracks. Buck snorts with a grin, his face wobbling with flesh. Bigger. Maybe they dragged in a dead deer or rotten wild boar. Look at you, scared of wolves and tigers. I have chopped more greenskins than you have eaten black bread. E-rank mission, 20 goblins at most, And who knows, maybe a heavily armored goblin knight will jump out from inside. He hefts the axe, the blade catching the dull sun. Same plan as always. Groff and I go first. Rush in and cut them down. You two stay close. Use your bows and arrows. Do not let any trash sneak past. And that dog of yours, keep it watching the back. This is the usual tactic many low-level teams rely on for clearing tasks like this. Trust melee bravery and tough armor. Force their way in. Use the narrow space to neutralize goblin numbers. Let ranged cover from behind. Simple, direct, often effective if the intelligence is accurate and there are no unexpected surprises in the nest. I do not argue. Any extra warning about danger now would only be read by Buck's greed-blinded eyes as cowardice or delay. But I will never fully turn my back on the threat I felt last night, or on the forward who looks down on me. Charging straight in, the entrance is too open and we do not know what is inside. I say quietly but firm as stone. Let us wait outside and see if anyone is scouting or hunting. We can reduce their numbers and maybe catch a few ears. If nothing happens by afternoon, we will think of a plan to test further. Wait until when? Buck almost shouts, but Groff firmly grips his thick shoulder. The half-orc warrior looks at my calm face, then at the dark light-swallowing hole, and says gruffly, he has a point. Buck. Rushing blind, it could be a trap inside. Groff's words are like a small snowball, temporarily cooling Buck's restless fire. He glares at me and then at the silent Groff, finally grumbles. Fine. When the sun passes over that crooked treetop, he points to an old, half-dead oak on the side of the valley, branches twisted like ghostly claws if there is still no movement. Even the king of gods cannot stop me from going in to get the money. I nod silently and focus my senses back on the hole. Hans quietly moves closer and hands me a piece of tough, teeth-aching dried meat. I take it and chew slow, the dry fiber scraping my teeth, the chew its own faint warmth. The little wolf snuggles against my leg, his cold, damp nose touching the back of my hand on the bough. The waiting time is like thick fog in the valley, slow and sticky. The mist at the valley entrance gradually thins as the sun climbs, but the light at the bottom of the valley stays stingy and gloomy. The wind whistles tirelessly, bringing the damp, rotten smell of the distant forest, along with the foul odor at the hole, mixing of dung, decay, and a stronger, more pungent stench like old blood rust and beastly fur, pushing in waves. Buck and Groff find hiding spots and crouch down, but their restless emotions move like an undercurrent. Buck reaches for the leather wineskin for the third time. Groff's foot unconsciously grinds a small stone. Just as Buck is about to lose patience, and the edge of the sun barely touches the dead branch shadow on the crooked tree, the crooked wooden fence at the hole makes a sharp grating sound that hurts the teeth and is suddenly pushed open from inside. 5 goblins step out into the dim morning light. Their appearance is no different from the greens that have fallen under my arrow before. Dull greenish skin covered in warts and dirt, pointed ears poking from messy sticky hair, bodies wrapped in torn cloth scraps taken from unlucky travelers. Faded and unrecognizable. They carry simple weapons, bone spears, wooden sticks with stones tied on, one holding a piece of uneven flint. They look as though they are just wandering out for food or a routine watch. But at that moment my muscles tense silently. These 5 goblins behave differently from the lazy, cowardly, often treacherous greens I usually hunt, the kind who would fight over scraps or stab each other in the back. When they come out of the cave, they do not scatter. They quickly gather at the entrance, forming a loose half-circle facing outward, with their backs to the dark depths. Their small red eyes do not show confusion or greed, but a tense, cautious alertness mixed with deep fear and forced fierceness. They chatter in short, suppressed sounds, heads turning frequently, scanning the dark interior with its flickering light as if seeking permission or trying to suppress the instinct to run. Most importantly, as the wooden barrier was pushed open, a much stronger, more aggressive smell burst out, far more intense than goblin body odor. Like a beast trapped a long time suddenly rushing out. Wild animal stench, mixed with a nauseating blood rust smell, like rusted iron soaked in old rotten blood. The smell is so strong that even at this distance my nose stings. Beside me, Kobold lets out a low growl, almost like a whimper, his black fur bristling, claws digging into the damp ground. The instinctive fear small creatures feel when facing a top predator. It is not a wild boar, a deer, or even a normal bear. Something much worse is lurking inside that cave. Buck's face breaks into an excited, cruel smile. He points toward me, raises his left hand confidently, makes a quick horizontal gesture across his neck. His right hand first indicates the 3 goblins heading into the bushes, then nods toward the 2 guarding the cave entrance. He sharply taps his chest with his thumb and points to Groff. His clear message is, take out the 3 at a distance, then close in to deal with the 2 at the door. My heart pounds heavily. The signal to retreat rings loud in my head, but my reason tells me that turning around now would mean breaking from Buck and Groff immediately, and might trigger an attack from behind. I take a deep breath of cold, damp air, heavy with a bad feeling, suppressing my rising anxiety. I make a quick, clear gesture to Hans, target the 3. Then I take down the purplewood longbow. The cool grip feels solid in my hand, heavy and firm. The string, made from beast tendons, gives a faint, tense creak when pulled tight. I draw an arrow with smooth gray goose feathers. My target is the last goblin, the one glancing back nervously at the cave, closest to the entrance and most likely to sound the alarm first. I hold my breath. My gaze passes through the gap in the bow, beyond the cold fog, locking onto the faintly throbbing vein on the goblin's neck beneath its dark green skin. The wind, distant bird calls, Buck's heavy, excited breathing, Hans's slight tremor as he tightens his bowstring. All noise fades like tide. The world shrinks to the target and the arrow in my hand. I relax my grip. A faint sound of air breaking, almost swallowed by the wind. The arrow, like a streak of gray death, pierces precisely into the back of the goblin's neck. It collapses forward, as if its bones were yanked out, silent and motionless. The first two goblins turn around in surprise. My second arrow and Hans's shot follow almost together. One through an eye socket, the other through a throat. All three green bodies fall almost at once, their heavy thuds echoing briefly in the quiet valley. Almost the same moment, a loud crash and a sharp scream come from the other side, something heavy smashing bones. Buck, like a fierce tiger leaping from the darkness, swings his axe with precision, splitting the back of a goblin guarding the rear, splattering red and white. Grof's warhammer, with a dull wind sound, strikes another goblin's chest, denting it inward with the crack of breaking bone. Clean, sharp, nearly perfect synchronized hunting. Buck's face flashes proud, fierce light. He straightens up, about to call me over to gather the spoils and prepare to rush into what seems like an easily accessible treasure cave. A roar that is far beyond any goblin or even ordinary beast, full of primitive violence and rage, erupts from deep inside the cave like a volcano that has been brewing underground for thousands of years. Not just a roar, a shockwave, a physical release of pure destructive will. The sound crashes and amplifies in the narrow tunnel, loose stones at the entrance falling, the air trembling violently, even the ground resonating faintly. Then heavy, swift footsteps with a mountain-crushing pressure approach from the darkness like a savage war drum. Every step shakes the ground clearly, accompanied by the harsh sounds of wood splintering and rock scraping, along with goblin screams twisted by extreme fear. A wind of stench, 10 times more intense than before, mixing beastly fury and old bloodstains, sweeps out of the cave entrance first. What the heck? Buck's proud expression instantly tears open in shock. He is closest to the entrance and sees everything most clearly. A huge, terrifying green figure, almost filling half the tunnel, crashes through the remaining wooden barriers and debris at the entrance like an out-of-control siege hammer, bursting into the faint daylight outside. Its height makes Buck look up. Its broad shoulders look capable of lifting collapsing cliffs. Its bulging muscles beneath dark green, thick skin ripple with explosive power. Veins twist like gnarled roots around its body. Its face is a nightmare, part bear's short snout, part goblin's pointed ears and fangs, combined into a grotesque visage. Its mouth full of crooked yellow-black teeth, foul saliva dripping from the corners. Most chilling of all are its eyes, dull yellow like aged inferior amber, burning not with wisdom or cunning, but with pure primal rage and destructive desire. At this moment, those eyes are locked on Buck and Groff, as if viewing intruders that must be crushed. Its right hand grips a terrifying wolf-tooth club almost as thick as an adult man's calf. The shaft rough and twisted, the tip not iron nails but covered with rusty metal fragments, beast fangs, and broken bone spikes, like a deadly weapon pulled straight from a nightmare. The most frightening part is at its neck, where a tuft of dark red, needle-sharp stiff hair stands upright, trembling slightly with its furious breathing, like a burning, ominous blood-red flame. The bear goblin, a mutated creature born from goblin blood, pure embodiment of violence and ferocity. Groff, push forward. Buck roars, instinctively taking a half step forward to attack. He raises his axe and swings it fiercely at the bear goblin's sturdy leg. He trusts the teamwork with Groff, the sharpness of his weapon, and of course hopes to earn the 5 gold soon. Almost the same time, Groff lets out a beast-like battle cry, lowers his half-body, suddenly raises his wooden shield and charges forward like a wild bull. He collides with the bear goblin's lower body with the force of a cannonball. At the same time, his warhammer swings upward at the vulnerable groin. A perfect combination, attack from below and above. A classic tactic of fighting strength with weakness. In the bear goblin's dull yellow eyes, a fierce light flashes clearly. Facing the coordinated attack, it does not retreat. It advances. Its left leg stomps forward like a stone pillar, stones flying. Its thick right arm swings the wolf-tooth club, not to smash but with incredible speed, slanting from bottom right to top left, aimed at Groff's shield. It is not the sound of a shield blocking. It is the sound of a shield exploding. Groff's wooden shield, which has endured many battles and resisted ordinary sword strikes, shatters completely under the heavy of the wolf-tooth club, like a thin pancake exposed to the sun. The thick wood splits into countless pieces. The hide tears with a piercing scream. The immense force passes through the broken shield and slams unreservedly into Groff's arms and chest.